If you like this story, make sure to support the author on Patreon, link is in the description.
Chapter 1, I thought this a normal world, apparently. Notes before reading. This is a high school DxD and To Love RU fanfic with the addition of some characters from other franchises. No Yuri. That's all and happy reading. Chapter 1. In the school hallway, just as Eiji was about to climb the stairs to the second year's floor, the sound of footsteps and someone shouting could be heard from upstairs. No running in the hallway. Rito, I'm warning you, stop running and accept your punishment. From the voice, it was definitely an angry girl. She seemed to be chasing after someone named Rito. When he heard this name, Eiji stopped his footsteps in the middle of the stairs and his eyes widened as if he realized something. Rito? Don't say that. Stop running. You're running too. You're also breaking school rules. Also, can you stop chasing me? I told you, it was an accident. I didn't do it on purpose. This time a boy's voice was heard. It seemed to be the voice of the person called Rito. Sure enough. As the voice got closer, a familiar-looking spiky brown-haired boy ran while descending the stairs. Eiji, who had originally been standing in the middle of the stairs, naturally made eye contact with the other party. The other party almost bumped into him, but he forcefully twisted his body and almost lost his balance while walking past him saying sorry. And continued running again. Eiji didn't reply and ignored him. He looked over and saw a black-haired girl also descending the stairs in a hurry. That girl must be named Yui. That Yui. As the moral head of the general committee, I'm an exception. To punish perverts like you, It was as if everything went into slow motion, before finishing her words. There was no rain. There was no thunder. The sky is clear. The floor is dry. Even clean with no banana peels lying there. But the girl somehow slipped. Rito, who had run some distance from the stairs, saw Yui about to fall down the stairs. He panicked, trying to run back to the stairs to save her. But judging from the distance of 2 or 3 meters apart, it was impossible for him to be in time to catch the girl. It was estimated that if someone fell down the stairs like the scene in front of him, that person would definitely suffer a concussion, and at the very least certain limbs would definitely bleed or break. Seeing the girl's body still in the air from his slow-motion perspective, Eiji sighed in his mind. I thought this was a normal world, apparently. Sigh. Reaching out his hand, he perfectly caught Yui's body that was about to fall into his arms. Yui was surprised. As she fell, she had actually closed her eyes and waited for the pain to come. But instead of pain, she only felt a soft feeling. Opening her eyes, she saw the face of a boy in a male school uniform at her school. At first she thought it was Rito, but it wasn't him. The boy who caught her and saved her turned out to be another boy. With blonde hair cut short. The blue eyes that looked at her were as beautiful as diamonds. Not only that, his face is also very handsome, like a prince out of a fairy tale book. The two-dimensional facial features mesmerized her, and her face turned red. For a moment, she even forgot about chasing after Rito. From Eiji's point of view, seeing the face of the girl in his arms blush and stare at his face in a daze. He smiled wryly. The other party's reaction was obviously due to seeing his too handsome face. He was about to ask, "Are you okay?" But before he could do so, a virtual screen suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. Ding! It was detected that the host had changed one of the plots in the To Love RU franchise. Successfully thwarted 0.1% of the plot of To Love RU. The matching golden finger successfully triggered. Ding! Congratulations, host, you got the inner voice system. As long as you complain about the plot in your heart, complain about the plot, heroine, or protagonist, you can get a random reward. The rewards can be skills, magic skills, superpowers, magic artifacts, and etc. P.S. not every complaint can get a reward, and it depends on how good the host is at complaining about the plot, heroine, or protagonist that is happening right in front of your eyes. By the way, it is advisable to complain right now because there is a heroine and protagonist near you. As someone who had known for a long time that he was reincarnated, he was excited that the golden finger he had been waiting for had finally arrived. He had waited for so long, this thing had finally come. If only he had visited this world a few years ago. In the previous world, he would definitely not have to worry too much about the disasters that would occur in the near future. As long as you have the power and are strong enough, you are not afraid of anything. Well, forget it. For now, from the explanation of the system, he more or less understood how to use the system to get rewards. Therefore, let's give it a try. With a faint smile, Eiji asked the girl in his arms. Are you okay? From Yui's perspective, that smile created the illusion of flowers blooming in the background. Like a picture of a smiling handsome boy in a manga. What was it called? She forgot. Why yes, I'm fine. Thank you. Still with a flushed face, and a pounding heart, Yui replied with a stutter. She obediently softened her body in his arms, leaning against his chest that felt hard but provided warmth and a sense of security that made her addicted. Eiji nodded. Then I'll put you down. Without waiting for the other party to reply, he lowered the girl's body. Yui, who was now no longer in his arms, had a disappointed expression as she stood on her feet. She looked at the two muscular hands that had previously carried her reluctantly. Don't look at my hands like that. Gosh, does this girl want to be carried by me all the time? You're a big girl. Although for me your body is light and I can keep carrying you for hours. As a time traveler from another world, I know who you are from the anime I've watched. If I'm not mistaken, judging by her long black hair, brown eyes, pretty face, and curvaceous body despite being a high school girl. Hey, isn't this Yui Katigawa? One of the heroine of the anime to love, are you? And the protagonist? The protagonist is also here. Orange-brown hair that is spiky like nails, golden brown eyes, a rather loose school uniform and an ordinary face, but is able to have a harem of beautiful girls in the original work. Yuki Rito, if not for the protagonist halo that the author made for him. I doubt the heroines, like Yui for example, would have fallen for him after being harassed so much by him with perverted accidents. Although initially Yui was often angry at being harassed by Rito, over time she got used to it and only pretended to be angry when one time Rito even slipped and dropped his face on her crotch. The protagonist is a lucky perverted bastard. I remember that. The heroines also have brain problems from falling in love after having so many perverted accidents with the protagonist. This girl in front of me. Yui, she's pretty, but it's a pity she has brain problems. Forget it, it's better not to get too close to her. Eiji smirked in his heart. Is this enough, Miss System? Ding! Congratulations host, you got the Eye Sharingan with no side effects. Even if the host does not have an Uchiha bloodline, your Sharingan automatically matches your bloodline. Every reward from the system is stored in the inventory and can be integrated or used at any time by host. Sharingan. That Sharingan? Okay enough, although excited, he could check his reward later. You, what are you saying? Yui looked at him with a surprised look. There was clear astonishment on her face. Eiji was confused, what was wrong with this girl? He didn't say anything after putting her down. No, what did you say? I didn't say anything. But, just now I heard the voice of number Yuan, your voice saying something about me, Eiji. What's wrong with this girl? Do you still speak human language? Of course I am, number Yuan, I speak human language. It's about you, why can't I hear your voice when you close your mouth? Too bad. Every time Yui wanted to say what she heard in her head. Any content related to that was always censored and could only say an unclear sounding abba baba. Yui realized this, she naturally felt embarrassed. What did I say? Why can't I say it? Obviously I heard this boy in front of me saying a lot of things about me. Things about me being one of the heroine, him being a time traveler, and Rito being the harem protagonist that she would love because of his perverted actions. The first and second are fine. But what's with the last one? No way, no how. There's no way she's in love with that perverted Yuki Rito. Also, why would this handsome boy in front of me want to stay away from me? Because I have brain problems like in the original work, he said? Hey, it's in the original work or whatever in your memory, okay? I'm obviously smart. The student with the best grades in the class every year. Absolutely no brain problems. And I definitely only feel anger and disgust whenever that Yuki Rito suddenly slips and bumps into the girls at school in a perverted manner. Just this morning too, when I saw that Yuki Rito suddenly bumped into my classmate, Haruna, and pinned her down while resting his head on her chest. All I felt was anger at seeing such immoral things, and that's why I chased after Yuki Rito to discipline him. Although Yui did not know why she could hear a voice that seemed to be the inner voice of the boy in front of her. She felt a little sad knowing the other party wanted to stay away from her because things didn't make sense that she would fall for a pervert like Yuki Rito. Yui. Are you okay? Sorry. Sorry. It's my fault, if I hadn't run like that. You wouldn't have fallen down the stairs. Yuki Rito was already running back to the stairs. Looking at Yui, who was fortunately unharmed, he let out a sigh of relief. With a sorry face that looked miserable, he apologized repeatedly to her. But was it just me, or did Rito deliberately ignore Eiji, who saved Yui? Hey? Wait, Rito even somehow has a hidden hostility in his eyes when he looks at Eiji. Although it was only for a second, and not very obvious. Eiji realized the hostility in the protagonist's gaze the moment he saw it. Eiji was dumbfounded. He felt that this Yuki Rito was somewhat different from the original work. If it was Yuki Rito in the original work, even though he was a lucky perverted bastard, he was still basically a kind-hearted and non-vindictive person. But looking at this Yuki Rito in front of him, Eiji was sure this boy had enmity with him. Yui had a complicated look when she saw Rito apologizing to her. At first she wanted to be angry, but seeing him like this, she was about to accept his apology. But at this moment, she suddenly heard Rito's voice in her head. Not only Yui, Eiji even heard it. How dare that boy touch my Yui's body with his dirty hands? Although I know he did it to save Yui, but it still pisses me off. Shit. Who is this boy? I've never seen him before. Seeing his face, which is more handsome than the protagonist like me, makes me annoyed and want to rip that face off. Unfortunately, Yui is also here. I can't be impulsive, if I do, antagonizing that boy with obvious. I'm afraid Yui will have a bad impression of me. In my previous life, I regret not accepting you into my harem. After becoming the Galactic King and getting killed in the Interstellar War, I really regret not following Momo's idea of becoming the harem king. If I had, at least I wouldn't have died with regrets. But fortunately I was given a second chance. This time I will definitely not repeat my mistake in the previous life. Yui, just like in the previous life. I will definitely make you fall in love with me. This time, I will definitely make you one of my wives and you will give birth to many fat babies for me, hehe. Rito looked innocent at the moment, others probably wouldn't know how disgusting what he was thinking was as he repeatedly apologized to Yui. Except for two people, of course. Yui was dumbfounded, she looked at Yuki Rito, who apologized to her in disbelief. Eiji on the other hand was surprised. He was actually not surprised that Yuki Rito in front of him was indeed not Yuki Rito in the original work. Since Yuki Rito was hiding hostility towards him, he was already suspicious. It seemed that this Yuki Rito was a regressor who died in a previous life and was given a chance to start over. Since he was a reincarnator himself, okay, that was it. But what surprised him was, why could he hear Yuki Rito's voice? Or rather, he knew it must be his inner voice. Even so, why? Why could he hear the protagonist's inner voice in his head? It's fine if it's the heroine's soft and satisfying inner voice. But this is the voice of a man with a disgusting masculine voice in his head. Hearing the male voice inside his head made him shudder. Eiji said he couldn't stand this. Miss System, you have to give me an explanation. Chapter 2, Why is she here? I misunderstood, this world isn't just to love, are you? The title of this book has been changed. Before, To Love Are You and DXD with Inner Voice System. After, Inner Voice, all heroines hear my inner voice. That's all, and happy reading. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Everyone, our class has new students from overseas. Teacher wants you all to pay attention because this new student is going to introduce himself. Seiya-kun, please come in. Everyone in Class 2A became curious, except Ui and Rito, who already knew who the new student was, of course. After all, they had recently met him on the stairs. Ui looked at the blonde boy who walked into the classroom with a smile on her face. After being saved by him on the stairs, she certainly had a good impression of this new student. Many things surprised her, from the blonde boy's inner voice and Rito's inner voice that she could hear. The blonde boy's inner voice was fine. But after hearing Rito's inner voice earlier, Ui had to admit that she was foolish in the past because she was fooled by Rito's acting, which pretended to be innocent with his unintentional perverted actions. Actually, after hearing his inner voice, she just found out that all this time Rito's perverted actions might not have been 100% accidental. It was probably intentional by him, and hearing that boy wanted her to give birth to many fat babies for him with a perverted laugh. Regardless of whether it was true that Yuki Rito, who was sitting not far from her, was a returnee from the future or something. Even the blonde boy said he was a time traveler. Ui now felt even more disgusted with Rito. She increased her vigilance on the boy and thought to always keep a safe distance from him. Rito, who was sitting in the back row by the window, looked at Ui, who was sitting in the front row, with annoyance. He saw her smiling at the blonde boy who had just entered the classroom with jealousy in his eyes. Damn, what's wrong with Ui? Obviously I apologized to her before, but I feel like her attitude towards me has become very cold. Even before we went back to class, I could see her looking at me with a real disgust that was different from usual. This is bad, it must be because of that blonde boy. Transfer student? There were some transfer students in my previous life. But blonde boy wasn't one of them. I feel like this second life is a bit different from my first. And everything is definitely that blonde boy's fault. Just wait, I will definitely make a plan to get rid of you, blonde boy. Don't look at me as a normal boy. In my previous life I was the king of the galaxy who had soiled my hands with the blood of many alien races. Hee hee. Killing a fragile handsome blonde boy like you, even though I'm still not as strong as I was in my first life. The current me is enough to kill you with my bare hands. Not only Ui, strangely some of the other girls in the class suddenly glanced at Rito, who looked innocent and friendly with strange looks. Some of them could also actually hear Rito's inner voice. Even Eiji's inner voice about the incident on the stairs earlier. But putting that aside, right now the voices of the transfer students turned their attention to the front of the classroom. Hi everyone, I'm Eiji Seiya, a transfer student from Denmark. Due to certain reasons, especially my mother who is from Japan, I decided to transfer to a Japanese school. I hope to make friends with all of you. Eiji, with a smile on his handsome face, introduced himself, making many female students scream with excitement. They were screaming because they were happy that the transfer student was a very handsome blonde boy, of course. As for the male students, many of them clucked their tongues with unhappy expressions. When they see a guy who looks better than them, they naturally feel jealous. At least almost all the male students in Class 2A, they did, including Rito, who was not only jealous, but had murderous intent in his eyes. Everyone else in the class didn't realize this, but Eiji did. Including Rito, who seemed to intend to get rid of him in some way. he also realized it from his inner voice that he heard. Although he wanted to make Rito's voice not heard anymore in his head. Miss System said she couldn't do anything about it because this was one of the system's features that actually also benefited him. Of course, being able to hear the protagonist's inner voice was also an advantage so that he could destroy other plots and get rewards. In the end, Eiji could only endure. After a brief self-introduction and questions and answers from girls who were curious about him. Answering questions like "Does he have a girlfriend?" To which he replied no, and other questions. Actually, except for the fact that he didn't have a girlfriend and his name, all the information about him was fake. For your information, he is not from Denmark. It was just nonsense that he made up by faking his information using his computer skills, which he was basically quite good at. Because in the previous world, the technology there had already developed further than this world. As one of the students who had also attended school there, he had learned a lot to prepare for his future. Well, it was not the world of his previous life, even though he was a reincarnator. But the previous world, from a week ago before he happened to go to his shed and opened an old cupboard in which there was a door to another world. It's a bit like the closet in the movie Narnia, the difference is, instead of going from the real world to the fantasy world. Eiji knew he was moving from the game world to the anime world given the fact that he was reincarnated in the game world in the first place. It was a bit complicated and strange, but that was the reality. To be honest, his coming to this world was just a whim and he actually still had problems in the previous world to deal with. It was just that he did not expect, this morning, the first time he tried to pretend to be a transfer student. He met the heroine and protagonist of another franchise which finally triggered his long-awaited golden finger. After 18 years of reincarnation, he had actually been skeptical that he had a golden finger, at least other than the cupboard in his warehouse that might be one of his golden fingers to go to another world that he discovered not long ago. But hey! He is certainly very happy to be able to have an actual golden finger that can make him have cheating powers like other Isekai protagonists. That way, the problems in the previous world, let's call it home world, might be handled by his own power and make the heroines there. Cough. As long as he can foil more plots, he can earn a lot of rewards. In the afternoon, after school hours are over, Eiji realized that the plot point of To Love You didn't seem to have gotten that far. Or rather, it's still in the early stages. He realized this because in class, he didn't see the pink-haired girl who was the main heroine of this franchise. No wonder that Rito regressors seemed to be more focused on attacking UI and the purple-haired girl named Sarenji Haruna, who was also one of the heroine in the current original work. He must have been acquainted with other heroines besides UI, the purple-haired girl, Haruna being one of them. It was only a brief introduction and on a superficial level, the closest to him was probably UI. Because that girl had been saved from an accident that could have given her a concussion or broken bones earlier this morning. That girl enthusiastically took him around the school to tell him all the school facilities. Even the first and third year buildings, she told him the way. Well, the problem was besides feeling the look of jealousy and hatred from the protagonist who was hiding a few meters away in the bushes. With the Sharingan of the system he had integrated into his body in the restroom during break time earlier. His physical power and senses had increased many times that of an ordinary person, even the protagonist who was hiding in the bushes could be noticed. However, the real problem was with him current power. It also made him more sensitive to the feeling of being seen by others. Putting aside the protagonist Rito who clearly had murderous intent in his eyes from seeing him walking with UI at the moment. From the third-year student building, precisely at a window beside him and UI who were walking outside the building. Raising his head slightly, Eiji saw a girl looking at him from the window. Unlike the protagonist's gaze that had killing intent, the girl was only giving him a curious look, but it was unusual because he felt that the girl was doing something to examine his body just from her gaze. The feeling was subtle but real. The girl's long red hair fluttered in the wind, her blue eyes that were no less blue than his looked into his eyes. Her beautiful face and plump figure were reflected in Eiji's eyes. For a moment, Eiji was mesmerized by her beauty, but it was soon replaced by a feeling of surprise when looking at her, especially the faint smile she gave him. He immediately averted his gaze from the girl in the window and looked forward again. Eiji-kun, what's wrong? Yui, who was standing beside him, seemed to realize something was wrong with him. While walking, Eiji shook his head, smiled and said, "It's fine, it's just Katigawa-san. Yui, just call me Yui." Yui smiled. That smile looked like a girl in love, but the girl herself was unaware of her feelings. Probably because the ears of Rito, who was hiding in the bushes, were quite sharp. He heard Yui say that to him and burned with the fire of jealousy. Eiji Seiya. Ah! How dare you seduce Yui? My Yui, why is she smiling like that at another man, even asking him to call her by her first name? Eiji, it's your fault. Have to find an opportunity, then I'll definitely make you stay away from Yui. Even if I have to use force. Yui's smile froze, her expression turned ugly when she heard Rito's inner voice that seemed like the person himself was following her and hiding somewhere. That only disgusted her even more. Who are you calling your Yui? I don't belong to you. Eiji didn't notice the change in Yui's expression, he just glanced slightly at certain bushes with a smirk on his face. He wanted to complain about how unreasonable the regressor protagonist was when he saw things not as he remembered. But now that he had a more interesting and more useful idea, he still felt the red-haired girl in the window staring at him. Knowing the other party was the main heroine of another franchise. He was indeed surprised at first, but now he just wanted to use this opportunity to get another reward. The girl in the window. Why is she here? I thought this world was just a To Love Ru franchise, but it doesn't seem so. Because that red-haired girl also exists, if I remember correctly. She's one of the heroine of another franchise. That anime franchise is called High School DxD. It's the same brainless harem anime as To Love Ru. Basically the heroine falls in love with the perverted protagonist. To Love Ru's protagonist may still be better because there it is shown that the protagonist is not intentional with his perverted actions. Of course, Rito's protagonist in this world is different from the original work because he's a regressor. High School DxD's protagonist is at least worse than To Love Ru's protagonist in the original work. Why? It's because the protagonist is a pervert who really likes boobs. He often groped the heroine's breasts in the original work and the heroines didn't feel disgusted or anything because of his perverted actions. They fell in love with the protagonist, not only because of the protagonist's halo that the author made, but also because the author added a thing called draconic aura, which basically has the effect of subtly luring the opposite sex. In the original work, that red-haired girl, Rias Gremory, realized this. But by then it was too late because she had already fallen in love with the protagonist. She didn't react much when she found out this fact and was happy to let her breasts be groped by the protagonist, even when in battle where she didn't mind exposing her breasts to her enemy just because the protagonist needed to pierce her nipples to increase him power. That was a really stupid power-up method, ha 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 ha. I laughed when I remembered that episode in my previous life. What a pity. A beautiful girl like Rias, falling for a pervert like the protagonist. It's okay if it's just a pervert, because it's normal to be a pervert as a man. Although the protagonist of this DxD is excessive, but the problem is that this protagonist really doesn't have the guts to make the final step in a man and woman relationship. He kept pretending to be stupid and insensitive to girls like Rias who had fallen in love with him, and never properly reciprocates the girls' feelings while enjoying caressing their breasts. Really stupid. I remembered this after watching 3 seasons of the anime, which must have been quite long. The protagonist is a pervert, but he's a herbivore who likes to make the girls who fall in love with him wait so long. That's a very long complaint. Eiji, who was too busy stringing words in his head, didn't even notice Yui closing her mouth with a surprised expression. It was because she knew who Rias Gremory was that Eiji was talking about. Rias Gremory was the most popular senior student in the 3rd year. It turned out that Senpai also had an equally disgusting story, or rather more disgusting than her for being involved with the protagonist. Oh wow! I wonder who the protagonist of that Rias Senpai franchise is? If I knew, I would definitely avoid it just like Rito. Ugh! Ui felt like this school was becoming rather scary. Eiji, who heard Ui groan, turned his head and asked, "What's wrong, Ui? Stomach ache?" No. Eiji-kun, I'm fine." Seeing Eiji's handsome face that looked worried about her, Ui smiled and somehow felt safe. If only all men were like Eiji. Or at least had some good things like him. She probably wouldn't hate men so much. Of course, other than the men in her family, Eiji was an exception that she only realized this morning. Eiji nodded, not asking the girl any further questions and staring at the screen of the more interesting and more fragrant system. Because the screen displayed the new reward he got from the system. Ah! I cheated. Rito, where are you? Want to teach me a lesson? Come and do it. Incidentally, I want to try out my new toy. Chapter 3, Rito, why Ui? Why? Eiji, pft. Ah ha ha ha. Ding. It was detected that the host has changed one of the plots in the High School DxD franchise. Successfully changed 4.1% of the plot of High School DxD by thwarting Rias Gremari's first meeting with protagonist Eiji Seiya. Ding! Congratulations host, successfully triggered the reward crit. You get the Sword of Promised Victory, Excalibur. With the help of the system, Excalibur is automatically reconstructed into sacred gear. Ding! The reconstruction was successful. Divine Construct type changed to Divine Soul Construct. Sword of Promised Victory / Excalibur is now connected to the host's soul. Congratulations host! You have gained the Sacred Gear Longinus, Excalibur. PS, FYI, this reward upgrade feature is caused by a reward crit that the host successfully triggered. If the host wants to experience it again, you must change multiple plots in one move like before. That's what Miss System said. Seeing as your system isn't a stingy dog system. Eiji said that he was grateful to have a system that was so generous to its hosts. Unlike the poisonous systems in certain novels that enslaved their hosts with stingy rewards. My system is so good. Thank you Miss System, you're the best. Miss System. Somewhere, a loli rubbed her little nose, her baby cheeks flushed. Eiji certainly didn't know this. After finishing walking around the school with the pretty girl beside him, Ui and he had now arrived in front of the school gate. Eiji-kun, which way did you go home? Before going home, while pinching her skirt, Ui with a shy expression asked, even hurriedly adding. If it's the same as mine, maybe we can go home together. Eiji. Ui, are you in love with me? Ha! How can you ask me that? I'm not in love with you. I'm just... Humph. You're too narcissistic, Eiji-kun. Panicked and confused, Ui argued. Her face was flushed and her eyes dared not look at Eiji. Honestly, the reason she wanted to go home with Eiji, she was worried that the boy would experience something bad because Rito seemed to want to take revenge on him. As the head of the school's moral committee, wouldn't it make sense to ensure the safety of her classmate? Making excuses for herself. I'm sure I'm not in love. I'm just a little fond of Eiji-kun, that's why I'm worried about him. Eiji grinned, he reached out his hand, lifted Ui's chin with his finger and looked directly into the girl's eyes. Really? Then why does Ui want to come home with me? That. Feeling Eiji's fingers holding her chin, Ui, whose face was already as red as a tomato, wanted to look the other way, but she was forced to stare at the blue eyes and handsome face in front of her. Although she could have slapped Eiji's hand to get him to let go, but somehow there was a feeling of pleasure in being treated like this by him, making her have no desire to resist. This was the first time she was touched in this way by a boy. If it was another boy, she would have slapped the other party and scolded him for doing something immoral. But this was Eiji, Strangely, if it was him, she didn't seem to mind too much about the physical contact so far. Maybe because the other party was the one who had saved her life this morning? She unconsciously developed a high tolerance for him. Ui. The blonde boy called her name again, but this time with a spring smile and a narrowed gaze that overwhelmed her. That two-dimensional handsome face was so sly. As the head of the school morale committee, I have the responsibility to ensure the safety of transfer students. Eiji-kun, don't misunderstand. I don't hate you. I actually like you a little, but falling in love? Isn't that too soon? Although Ui said that, her red face and rapid heartbeat betrayed her words. Eiji realized this and laughed, looking at Ui's beautiful blush face. The other party deserved to be the heroine. In fact, all the heroine in the To Love RU franchise, they all had above-average beauty that definitely made many men like them with just a first glance. Surprisingly, in the anime or the original works, there is not much mention that beautiful girls like Ui have many suitors. Perhaps there are only a few heroines whose beauty is almost the same as Ui's, but who have many suitors for the needs of the plot. Other heroine, like Ui. They never seem to be with other men except the protagonist or their family. That's a comfortable condition for a dense and slow protagonist like Rito in the original work, because he doesn't have to worry about the other heroines. He doesn't pay much attention to getting entangled with other men, or in other words doesn't have to worry about becoming a victim of NTR. That also applies to the heroines in the high school DxD franchise, protagonists who like to keep the women who love them waiting for so long. Surprisingly, the heroines are so loyal to wait so long until the protagonist is done with character development or his stupid mental problems. How cute! See cute? Eiji-kun, who are you calling cute? Of course it's you, Ui. You're beautiful and cute. Leaning his head, Eiji whispered into Ui's ear and added, it would be great if a girl like Ui could be my girlfriend. Degree. Ui's brain stopped working. She couldn't even hear, or rather ignore the loud explosion sound that sounded not far away. Only Eiji knew why the explosion sound happened and who did it, which made him smirk. On the other side, not far from the school gate where one could clearly see the scene of a boy leaning forward, to the face of a girl in front of the school gate. From his position, the scene looked like a beautiful kissing scene. But to an orange-brown-haired boy crouching in the bushes, the scene looked terrifying. It was more horrifying than any horror movie he had ever seen. His head felt green, his pupils filled with shock and jealousy before being replaced with insane murderous intent. In this state, he didn't even realize that he had punched the tree next to him with one hand, which left it broken and hollow. That boy was of course Rito. Right now his heart ached to see the woman he loved being kissed by another man in front of his eyes. If it wasn't because he didn't want to show his cruel side to Ui, he would have immediately jumped from the bushes and ran to the school gate to beat the blonde boy to death. In the end he could only waiting for Ui to part with the blonde boy. And after that? Hee. Rito gritted his teeth and roared inwardly. Originally I just wanted to break a few of your bones and warn you to transfer to another school. But look what you did! You dare to kiss my Ui, one of the women who will become my harem, in front of my eyes. Eiji Seiya. You worm, I'll kill you. How dare you kiss my woman with your filthy mouth? Ah. And Ui, what are you doing? Why did you keep quiet when that blonde bastard kissed you? With your personality that hates men other than me, you should slap him and hate him to death. Why Ui? Why? Oh, I know. That blonde bastard must have threatened you with something, right? I knew it. Don't worry Ui. Eiji Seiya. That blonde boy I will definitely kill. Apart from scolding people, the protagonist is very unreasonable to make up his own stories. Who is being threatened? Who was kissed? When Ui heard this, her brain went back to work and her face was very red. Putting aside the unreasonable Rito, she finally had the strength to get rid of the hand holding her chin and said, Eiji-kun, what are you saying? Being your girlfriend? That's too soon. We just got to know each other this morning. You're too hasty. After saying that, she was actually worried to see Eiji's sad expression. But all she saw was his handsome face laughing out loud. Pfft! Eiji-kun, you. Ha ha ha, sorry. I was actually just kidding. Wiping away the tears at the corner of his eyes, Eiji stopped laughing and smiled. You're kidding? So, your earlier confession about wanting me to be your girlfriend was a lie. Yui opened her mouth with a surprised expression. There was a burst of anger and disappointment in her heart. Her face turned cold. She was about to turn around and leave angrily, but before that she heard Eiji say something again. Not really, it's not completely a lie. Although not now since we haven't known each other for long. But if it's about who the girl I might want to be my girlfriend is, Yui would definitely top the list in my heart. Hearing this, Yui's cold expression eased. There was a small smile on her face. Really? Eiji nodded. Yes. So you want to be my girlfriend? Humph. Who wants to be your girlfriend? Yui snorted, but she said that with a smile on her face. It was obvious that she wasn't serious. The answer in her heart might be the opposite. Who knows? I know that, Yui is just too shy. Actually she doesn't mind being my girlfriend, right? Yui, Eiji-kun, you're too narcissistic. Wait, Yui. I haven't replied to your words yet. Why are you saying I'm narcissistic? Because you're narcissistic. Hey, that doesn't make sense. Meanwhile, still inside the school. Precisely in a room with a signboard that reads Occult Research Club. The inside of the club was quite luxurious, more like an office with most of the items usually used for entertainment and relaxing. There was a 58-inch TV, a high-quality soft sofa, a bookshelf filled with manga and novels. Fluffy carpets, some paranormal accessories such as magic bulbs, plastic skulls, a poster with a summoning circle that looked like it was drawn using blood, but it was actually just drawn using store-bought red paint. The red-haired girl said that although the club was named the Occult Research Club, the club itself was not serious, and in fact this club room was used as the group's headquarters to carry out its actual work as a city watchdog. As the heir to the Gremory clan, or let's call it the Gremory family of the underworld where devils and other supernatural beings lived. Rias Gremory was a devil of the underworld who was currently carrying out her family's mission as the watchdog of Kuaha City while attending school in the human world. So far, during her stay in the human world, she of course pretended to be human. Only her friends and supernatural beings who recognized her status in the underworld knew that she was a devil among the many humans in this school. Well, now, the red-haired girl, Rias, was sitting on the soft sofa looking at the monitoring screen connected to her demon pet. A few minutes ago, she had told her demon pet, the one-eyed demon bat, to fly after the blonde boy she had previously seen from the window. From the previous brief eye contact with the blonde boy who looked more handsome than one of her peerage who also happened to be blonde, she sensed that the blonde boy was unusual. Aside from being very handsome and fitting her aesthetic of a blonde CEO dominating in a certain drama series, Rias felt a strange supernatural energy from the blonde boy that made her curious and wondered if the blonde boy had sacred gear hidden inside him. If that was true, she wanted to recruit the blonde boy into her group. For some reason, the situation urges her to seek out powerful people who can help her with her problems. So she secretly stalks the blonde boy using her demon pet, and it turns out, instead of making her know more about the blonde boy, of course she does get to know more about him. Or rather, she was being treated to dog food by watching the blonde boy who seemed to be named Eiji Seiya flirt with the black-haired girl who walked with him. Rias's expression became ugly, her pretty face looking rather envious of what she was watching. I'm a little unhappy. Also, what's with the voices? Without any magic or anything, I can hear the inner voices of the blonde boy and the orange-brown-haired boy who also seems to be stalking the blonde boy. Put aside the orange-brown-haired boy whose thoughts sound disgusting despite being called the protagonist. But this blonde boy, Eiji Seiya, he's a time traveler and says that I'm going to fall for a perverted protagonist obsessed with breasts. Even making me wait so long for the other party to return my love while letting him play with my breasts? Hey! No way! Who is this stupid woman? Me in an anime like that? It's definitely not me. Rias couldn't believe she would be as stupid as she was in the anime. Of course, so far, only from observations using her demon pet and listening to the inner voices of Eiji and the protagonists of the franchise that she had no connection with. Actually, she already 80% believed that this Eiji Seiya was really a time traveler and knew a lot about her from the anime he had watched. It was precisely because of that she was now even more curious and worried. She was curious and increasingly wanted to invite Eiji Seiya to her group. As for worry, she was worried that what happened in the anime would actually happen to her in this world. I certainly don't want to fall in love with the protagonist, even getting involved with the protagonist who actually made me fall in love with her because of the influence of the draconic aura, which I basically know is similar to the aura that succubus have to make the opposite sex fall in love. It's just that this effect is more subtle, and by the time I realize it, it might be too late, as Eiji Seiya said from his inner voice. But as a heroine in a harem anime, Rias actually believes it's not just because of the draconic aura factor that she can fall in love with the protagonist and is willing to wait so long to return her love. There must be other factors. For example, in an anime there must be a plot that makes the relationship between the heroine and the protagonist get closer and reach the point of falling in love. As a girl who actually likes otaku culture, she must have seen many such plots in anime and novels. But when she found out that a plot would govern her life, making her fall in love with the protagonist, Rias was disgusted and very unwilling to have her life governed by this thing called a plot. Even if the perverted protagonist proved to be very good, she still didn't want to know she would fall in love with him. She still did and fell in love with the protagonist. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. I, Rias, proudly declare that I don't want to get involved with the plot and protagonist. For that, perhaps only Eiji-kun can help me. I should invite him to join my group. Actually, there was no need to invite him to the group, but wouldn't it be better to include the other party in the group so that the two could get to know each other better? Rias was confident in her decision, especially when she sensed that Eiji didn't seem to be an ordinary human. He must be hiding his powers like that protagonist who liked to pretend to be a pig and became a blockbuster. Cough. Anyway, let's call Akeno first to talk about this. She was about to use telepathy magic instead of contacting the other party by phone to make it faster. But at this moment, suddenly the door of the club room opened and a girl with black ponytail hair and violet eyes walked in with a flirtatious smile and said, "I know." Rias. "No, what do you know?" Suddenly comes in and says, "I know. Know your favorite panties I accidentally threw away yesterday?" Akeno, what exactly do you know? If it's about your missing favorite panties, sorry. I actually accidentally threw them in the trash yesterday. Chapter 4, Rias, who is the protagonist of my franchise. Hearing Rias's confession about her panties, the black-haired girl named Akeno Himejima, who was originally about to say her discovery, was dumbfounded. Her flirtatious smile froze and said, What did you say? So the reason why I can't find my favorite pair of underwear from yesterday is because you threw them in the trash, Rias. Rias. Covering her mouth with one hand, Rias regretted rushing to confess her sin without knowing what Akeno knew first. She looked at the girl in front of her with an awkward smile. Akeno, calm down. Aren't those just panties? Just tell me what brand it is, I'll buy you a new one. Akeno smiled, but her eyes did not smile at all before saying, It's useless, it's a limited edition anyway. No longer in production. What, limited edition? Then go to the factory. Let the people there make it again. Don't worry, I persuaded the maker for you. The red-haired girl looked confident as she said that. Limited edition panties? This the first time I've heard of it. Isn't it still made of fabric? Is it really that hard to make panties like that without having to limit the number? But the black-haired girl shook her head, sighed and said, forget it. Why? Akeno, don't pretend to be fine. Rias walked up to her best friend, grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her. No, is it necessary to shake my shoulders like this? You're making me a bit dizzy. Akeno's lips twitched. I'm serious, Rias. It's just panties, forget it. You said that? Fine. Rias nodded, removed her hand from his shoulder and sat down again on her soft sofa while sipping tea. Akeno? Give up right away? Not persuading me anymore? Plastic friendship. Just kidding. From beginning to end, they were just joking around. If not for the necessity of the plot, they don't want to have participated in this forced-looking comedy. After the two sat down facing each other, and the black-haired girl did not forget to pour herself some tea as she was quite thirsty after coming this far. Rias led the conversation first by saying, So Akeno, what do you know? Setting down her cup, Akeno smiled mysteriously. Well, I have some interesting information that you might be interested in, Rias. The red-haired girl rolled her eyes. My queen, don't pretend to be mysterious. Just say it quickly because I also have something I want to tell you. Oh. The black-haired girl widened her eyes slightly before saying, all right, since you say so. I'll say it right away. Rias, if I say there is a time traveler in this school who knows that several people, including you, are the heroine of an anime she once watched, would you believe it? Seeing Rias looking at her strangely, Akeno still maintained her smile. I know you don't believe me, but Rias. What I'm saying is serious. In addition to the heroine like you who belongs to the harem franchise called High School DxD, there's also the protagonist according to that time traveler. If I'm not mistaken, the time traveler's name is Eiji Seiya, because he knows the anime's plot, according to his plot knowledge. Rias, you and probably also I will fall for the perverted protagonist who is obsessed with breasts. In fact, it is said that you would let your breasts be exposed in front of your enemies just to let the protagonist pierce your nipples to increase his power. That's quite a detail. Said Rias with a smile. She looked at the girl in front of her with a funny look. Yeah, and that's not all. By the way, Rias, why do I feel like you want to laugh at me? I told you, what I'm saying is serious. Akeno frowned, slightly displeased at the red-haired girl who was basically her best friend and boss, but she didn't take her seriously. The other party might not know, but since this morning, she had started hearing voices in her head. Upon further investigation, it turned out that somehow she was able to hear the inner voice of a second-year transfer student named Eiji Seiya who claimed that he was a time traveler from his inner voice. Not only Eiji Seiya, she could also hear the inner voice of a second-year student named Rito, who was told by the former that Rito was the protagonist of a franchise called To Love You. From the former, she got quite a lot of surprising information about the heroine, protagonist, and plot. As for the latter, Rito, that boy didn't seem simple either, because from his inner voice, he was a regressor who came from the future. However, although the other party is the protagonist, Akeno did not have a good impression of the protagonist because from his inner voice, she knew the boy was dishonest and disgusting in his own way. Forget the protagonist who didn't even have anything to do with her. To be honest, she was more interested in the time traveler. Her coming here was actually to tell Rias everything she knew about Eiji Seiya and hope that the red-haired girl would be interested in doing something for him. As a queen in Rias' peerage, this was the same as doing her duty as a loyal subordinate, right? So, Rias, my king, I hope you take this matter seriously. Pfft. The red-haired girl laughed. Oh no. She even pressed her stomach with her hands and almost knelt on the sofa. Ha ha ha. Ha ha. Akeno crossed her arms, making her large breasts rise up, her pretty face pouted and there it was clearly written that she was unhappy. This red-haired girl. If the other party is not her boss, she would have hit that redhead with her fist by now. I've reported such an important matter to her. But she didn't take me seriously at all, and instead laughed at me. Bastard! Are you done? Have you had your fill of laughing, my king? Akeno asked with a cold smile. Ha ha ha. Rias, you. Gomen, cough. I mean sorry. Rias knew if she continued laughing, the black-haired girl would not hesitate to unleash lightning and electrocute her to teach her a lesson. Don't look at Akeno like Yamato Nadeshiko, who was loving and a bit patient yet flirtatious like an older sister. Other than her, not many people knew that the girl had a black belly attribute. Once her dark side is triggered, the girl will also have the S attribute. S for sadistic. And Rias didn't want to be a victim of her S. Alright, about what you said earlier. I believe. Really? Akeno narrowed her eyes, her purple eyes staring at the red-haired girl's face as if to see if she was joking or not. If the other party was still joking, she might as well throw a little lightning at her. The red-haired girl shuddered at the black-haired girl's slightly dark gaze. She saw a slight S there. So she hurriedly explained, right, Akeno? What I told you also has to do with the time traveler you mentioned. Hey? How? Don't tell me you've... Rias nodded. I already know too. Akeno opened her mouth, surprised and said, you also heard that voice in your head. The red-haired girl nodded again and added, yeah, it seems like I'm not the only one hearing it. Rias said while looking at Akeno. Akeno raised her eyebrows. So, that's why you were laughing at me earlier. Now it makes sense. Earlier you were looking at me like I was a clown, right Rias? Haha no. I didn't see you that way, Akeno. It's just a little funny when you tell me things I already know seriously. The red-haired girl naturally lied. Actually, it was true, earlier she felt Akeno was like a clown that made her unable to help but laugh. But there was no way she would say that to her face, right? If she said it. Rias suddenly remembered the last time she made Akeno angry on Christmas Eve 2 years ago. That time she had accidentally dropped a cake full of cream on the girl's face and laughed at her, and what happened next was... The girl made a lightning whip with her magic and chased her all night while whipping her ass. Remembering the painful past of his ass, Rias gulped, she unconsciously pressed her butt deeper into the sofa. Aira, what's wrong Rias? Akeno tilted her head, looking at the red-haired girl with a smile that was more like a grin on her face. The red-haired girl shook her head and pretended to put on a serious face. It's fine, by the way Akeno. Because we both know and can hear that inner voice. That shortens my time to explain. I actually just wanted to call you, but since you came first. About the time traveler, Eiji Seiya. I have an idea to recruit him, but I doubt he would agree. So I was wondering if you have any good ideas on how to recruit the other party to agree, Akeno. Hearing this, Akeno was not surprised. She had expected Rias to be interested in getting Eiji Seiya to join their group. Not only was she interested after hearing his inner voice, but the red-haired girl also must have seen a glimmer of hope from the time traveler Eiji Seiya, who had plot knowledge and perhaps also hidden powers that could help her problems. Akeno actually felt sorry for her red-haired friend. So naturally, if she didn't want to help, she wouldn't have bothered to rush here and tell the other party about Eiji Seiya even though she already knew. So she held her chin thoughtfully before saying, I have a few ideas worth trying. Since the other party is a time traveler, it wouldn't be surprising that she would have his own arrogance as a time traveler, and the possibility of joining a group he knows from an anime he once watched is quite small. But that doesn't matter, because, aren't time travelers men? Hey? So what if it's a boy? Rias asked in confusion. Akeno shook her head, looking at the red-haired girl as if she was too slow. You seriously don't understand? Rias, don't you like reading manga and watching anime with romantic genres? Even I who don't really like watching anime, I learned a few things from watching dramas on TV. As if certain wires in her brain were connected, Rias widened her eyes as if realizing what Akeno meant. Ah! This, I was thinking a method like that could also be used. Indeed, if we use that method, the success rate of recruiting will be higher. The black-haired girl nodded, relieved to see that the red-haired girl actually understood what she meant. The red-haired girl smiled. She looked at her own figure and that of Akeno, who was no less beautiful and sexy than her. The confidence level to recruit Eiji Seiya became higher. Moreover, after seeing what Eiji Seiya actually looked like according to her aesthetics and his quite cute personality that she heard from his inner voice, she felt it wasn't bad to choose that boy. At least it was better than her bastard fiancé and perverted protagonist, who was said to not have enough guts as a man despite being a very perverted breast maniac. The protagonist of her own franchise was a herbivore, and to be honest now, even though she didn't know who the protagonist was yet, Rias already has a bad impression of him, even if the other party proves to be not so bad. If she falls for the protagonist, wouldn't that be tantamount to slapping herself, who not long ago said she didn't want to get involved with the plot and the protagonist? Speaking of the protagonist of her franchise, now she just remembered. Well, it has been decided that in order to recruit Eiji Seiya, we will use beauty tricks. But Akeno? But what? Akeno was now confused. Was there still a loophole in her plan? Rias guessed what the dark-haired girl was thinking from her expression and said, "It's not about your plan, but Akeno. Do you know who the protagonist of the High School DxD franchise is related to me in the original work?" That. Now that you mention it. Eiji Seiya never mentioned who the protagonist was other than mentioning the name of the protagonist from another franchise named Yuki Rito. Akeno had also just remembered this, and she was actually curious and worried. What she was worried about was accidentally getting involved with that perverted protagonist without knowing the identity of the other party who was actually the protagonist in question. Rias also had the same concern as Akeno. So she wondered who the protagonist was? Was he also a student at this school, or was he someone outside the school who wasn't even a student of the school at all? As the two wondered and started trying to guess who the protagonist was most likely to be. Coincidentally, at this time both of them heard the inner voice in their respective heads again. However, strangely this voice was not like that of Eiji Seiya and even Yuki Rito. This voice. It's strange, why hasn't Rias shown up yet? Based on the timeline, it's currently around the afternoon after school hour and Rias should like hanging out at the window of the third-year building while looking at the view from there, right? At that time I should show myself walking outside and pretend to accidentally see her at the window. When our gazes meet, that girl should be interested in me, especially after this time I even strengthened my draconic aura. In addition to suspecting that I have a dragon-type sacred gear, Rias will definitely fall in love with me faster than ever Unlike in the previous life, Eiji Seiya will definitely not become a herbivore harem protagonist who dies a virgin. This time, it's Rias, Akeno, and other women who loved me in previous lives. I will definitely fuck their cunts like crazy. All of you must kneel under my cock and serve me in bed every day. Ha ha ha, I will definitely become the true harem king in this life. Having many children, having many wives. With my knowledge from previous lives, it should be easier to make those girls fall in love with me again. But unlike before, to hell with cultivating feelings. Once those girls have a crush on me, I'll directly fuck and impregnate them like a real man Rias and Akeno looked at each other, they could see the ugly and disgusted expressions on each other's faces. Akeno. Issei Hayadu, do you know anyone with this name? Issei Hayadu. Issei Hayadu. Although I've never met and talked to him in person. Akeno tried to remember something and said, if I'm not mistaken, from the rumors about the infamous perverted trio in first-year students. One of these three people has the name Eiji Seiya. Rias's expression grew uglier, not even hiding her disgust. So he's the protagonist of my franchise? Rias Gremory, in the original work fell in love with that perverted boy and was even willing to wait so long for the other party to respond to my feelings while letting him play with my breasts. Akeno smiled awkwardly, there was also pity in her gaze. Calm Rias, that was in the original work. Akeno, it seems you're also one of the heroine from the way Eiji Seiya called you in his inner voice. Rias' expression became a little better knowing she didn't suffer alone in the original work. As for Akeno, after hearing this her expression became even uglier. Before she wanted to say something to make Rias feel worse, Eiji's other voice sounded in her head. Rias also heard it and she knew whose voice it was. It's only the first day I'm transferring schools, and I already know there are two protagonists of the regressor stream who attend the same school as me. Of course, I had originally guessed that Issei would also go to school here. He's the protagonist of High School DxD after all. Since Rias is also in this school, that perverted boy must also be in the same school as her. But I think it will be the same as canon, and the case of Yuki Rito being the protagonist of Regressor is purely coincidental. Unfortunately, things got even more troublesome. Issei Seiya, that protagonist also became the protagonist of the Regressor stream? Damn, who's the dog author who wrote this stupid plot? Fortunately I'm quite OP now. As long as the protagonists are still in the early stages and haven't reached the peak of their powers, I'm still confident to harass them like dogs if they dare to mess with me. The regressor protagonist, so what? Look at protagonist Yuki Rito who is kneeling in front of me right now. Although I don't know where she got the power that resembles a few percent of Shirahige from One Piece. In the end you still got overconfident and knelt down in front of the time traveler, right? Putting the former aside, but the latter content took Rias and Akeno by surprise. It seems that while they were chatting, the time traveler and a certain regressor protagonist were fighting somewhere and the result was the regressor protagonist kneeling? Rias' eyes lit up. My guess was right, time traveler are the real blockbuster. Akeno, it's been decided. We absolutely must recruit Eiji-kun at all costs. Yes. Weren't we going to do that from the beginning? Akeno rolled her eyes, from the way Rias changed Eiji Seiya's nickname and directly called him by his first name. She was sure the red-haired girl was now even more determined to use her body to get that time-traveling boy. She herself licked her lips, after all, what woman wouldn't like a super handsome and strong man? As long as he was in line with her tastes. It is certainly not impossible for a woman like her to take the initiative to pursue men. Chapter 5, Unreasonable Regressor Protagonist. About 10 minutes ago. Before the second protagonist's voice was heard, Eiji had already convinced Ui to return to their respective homes. Although Eiji didn't know why the girl seemed anxious and worried about letting him go home alone. But in the end she gave in, and told him to at least go home through a street with many people. Eiji agreed to that. Which he actually didn't take seriously. On the way home, he deliberately went to a quiet place, precisely through a small road that passed through the forest. There were some empty factory-like buildings that were uninhabited. After turning there, he turned around and said, "This place is good for fights, isn't it, Yuki Rito?" "You? How did you know?" The voice came from behind the factory fence and the figure of the orange-brown-haired boy finally walked out with shock on his face. Eiji smiled, seeing Rito's surprised yet calm posture after being caught stalking. Worthy of being the protagonist of Regressor, he must have experienced many battles before. If it was Rito in the original work, he would have stuttered and scratched his head nervously. "I've actually noticed you hiding in the bushes while Ui and I were chatting in front of the school gate." The shock on Rito's face was immediately replaced with a cold expression and murderous intent in his eyes. "Then you should know why I followed you all the way here, right? Eiji?" "Maybe. Eiji pretended to think of something while holding his chin and said, "You want to do your homework together at my house? No. Want to take me to taste the food your little sister cooked at your house? No. We're not even friends to get to that point. Wait, why do you know I have a little sister?" Rito widened his eyes in confusion. Obviously the other party had only transferred to his school this morning, and the two hadn't even talked to each other in class. Why would the other party know he had a younger sister? For her little sister, Mikon. He had never even mentioned he had a little sister to him classmates because no one had asked. So why would Eiji Seiya, who just transferred to his school this morning, know about his little sister? Even the other party seemed to know Mikon was always the one who cooked at home. Rito looked at the blonde boy in front of him warily, the killing intent in his eyes growing stronger as the other party probably had ill intentions towards him and his family from the start. But why? Although he didn't know why, whoever had bad intentions towards him, especially his little sister. The other party must die. Why would I know? Eiji smiled playfully and said, "Why do you think? You." Enough. Eiji Seiya, from the beginning why I followed you was because I wanted to kill you. How dare you seduce and kiss you and even have bad intentions on my little sister. You must die here. After saying that, the air around Rito changed, his clenched right hand buzzed and emitted purple light. Without waiting any more, he ran extremely fast towards Eiji, who was actually 5 meters apart. But in 1 second, he had already appeared with a purple fist swinging at the other party's face. Eiji, who saw this, did not panic, but was only slightly surprised by the strange power that Rito regressor had. Sure enough, because it was a regressor. This Rito was definitely not like the Rito in the original work, who was basically just an ordinary human with no superpowers other than his perverted luck that was at the supernatural level. Unlike the Rito in the original work, the Rito in front of him has superpowers. But so what? Superpower? He has it too. Before Rito's purple fist hit his face, Eiji's pupils changed, it rotated so that watermarks like 3 tomo appeared around his blue pupils. Unlike the normal red-colored Sharingan from the Naruto franchise, the Sharingan Eiji got from the system did not change the color of his eyes. It only added black spots like circular water droplets called tomo, and it instantly had 3 tomo opened. Unlike the people of the Uchiha clan, who generally started from opening 1 tomo the first time they awakened their eye power called the Sharingan. Eiji's Sharingan was different, at least he immediately jumped from level 1 to level 3. At this level, his vision and physical power increased tens of times. Rito's speed that was originally quite difficult for his eyes to see, now Rito's fist that was only a centimeter away from his face looked very slow. Eiji shifted his head slightly, avoiding Rito's strange fist, and at the same time raised one leg to kick Rito in the stomach. Bang! Boom! The two sounds of a person's stomach being kicked and the sound of an explosion sounded almost simultaneously. Rito rolled and bounced for 10 meters, but the fist that Eiji dodged was actually not only glowing, it also released a strange shot that distorted the air and consequently perforated a large part of the factory wall behind Eiji. Eiji, who saw this, widened his eyes. Now he was curious about where this power that Rito regressor had came from. I feel that the punch and buzz are similar to Shirahage's punch with the power of the Gura Gura no Mi fruit, but not like that old man he saw in the anime. Rito's was slightly different and definitely still much weaker than the power the old man had. But the visual effects were almost the same. And only different in color. Unlike the old man's punch, which emitted white light, Rito's on the other hand emitted purple light with almost the same humming sound. Rito, whose attack was successfully dodged and was hit by Eiji's counterattack, was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe the blonde bastard had the ability to dodge his attacks, even managing to attack him by kicking him in the stomach. Rito realized the strength he currently had was less than 10% of his peak in his previous life. But for fighting ordinary humans, he would have been the strongest human on Earth by now with his physical strength and superpowers that he got from his Void Dragon bloodline, which he luckily managed to have again from his previous life. His own Void Dragon heritage was already very weak now, and he needed to go into space again to perfect his bloodline in that place. But to fight a mere blonde boy, there should be no problem with his current power. So why? Why is there still a boy who is the same age as him, even having the ability to dodge his attacks? And by the way, my stomach hurts a lot, estimated from the previous kick. Eiji's physical power might be a bit stronger than him. Either way, that blonde boy is definitely not an ordinary human. Rito suspected that Eiji was actually an alien pretending to be human like some of the aliens he had met in his previous life. Still want to continue? Eiji's casual-sounding question made the Galactic King in his previous life feel insulted. Rito got up from the ground, his eyes still filled with killing intent and both hands glowing with purple light. Sure, but before that I want to confirm something. You're not human, right? You must be an alien of some race pretending to be human. Hey? No, I'm human. Liar. Look at your own eyes, they're not the eyes a human should have. Eiji's lips twitched, he rolled his eyes and said, what about you? Can a human make his hands buzz and glow with purple light? That's not the power a human should have. Humph. Rito snorted coldly. I'm just built differently, I'm the chosen human destined to possess the entire land and the starry sky. Don't confuse me with an alien who pretends to be human to hide his disgusting appearance. Eiji. What? Can't answer? Sure enough, you must be an alien. But whatever, you'll die in my hands. Rito attacked again, hitting and unleashing multiple blows that could tear through the air. Eiji casually dodged all the attacks, even punching and kicking Rito again in several places. Rito, who was repeatedly slapped, punched, and kicked without any of his own attacks hitting the opponent, gritted his teeth. He started roaring crazily, continuing to attack until 20 minutes later when the purple light on his body went out, he ran out of energy and panted while kneeling on the ground. His face was swollen from being slapped and punched repeatedly by Eiji. And now he could only stare at the blonde boy who was still standing casually in front of him, looking down at him as if he was a clown. Rito felt humiliated, he felt full of hatred. If it was him in his previous life, killing the boy in front of him would have been as easy as killing an ant. But look at him now, just a few minutes of using void energy, his body is already overwhelmed and standing is difficult at the moment. He felt ashamed of speaking so much as if he was going to win before, at the end of which he was now the kneeling party with an ugly and embarrassed expression on his face. Damn, Eiji! You cheating! Hearing how absurd the defeated regressor protagonist was, Eiji, who had been very relaxed and calm, started laughing. Cheating? Where exactly am I cheating? Because I'm stronger than you? Or I don't talk more than you? Rito's expression grew uglier and uglier, the last sentence made him extremely embarrassed and humiliated, but on the surface he still put on the dignified face of the king of the galaxy, in his previous life. It was at this moment that Eiji heard the voice of the other protagonist in his head. He who originally wanted to deal the final blow to Rito regressor today, froze in place with a shocked expression. The voice he heard was the inner voice of the protagonist of the High School DxD franchise. And it seemed Issei was also the protagonist of the regressor stream, just like Rito? Eiji frowned and massaged his forehead slightly, which confused the kneeling Rito. It's only the first day I'm transferring schools, and I already know there are two protagonists of the regressor stream who attend the same school as me. Of course, I had originally guessed that Issei would also go to school here. He's the protagonist of High School DxD after all. Since Rias is also in this school, that perverted boy must also be in the same school as her. But I think it will be the same as canon, and the case of Yuki Rito being the protagonist of Regressor is purely coincidental. Unfortunately, things got even more troublesome. Issei Hayadu, that protagonist, also became the protagonist of the Regressor stream? Damn, who's the dog author who wrote this stupid plot? Fortunately I'm quite OP now. As long as the protagonists are still in the early stages and haven't reached the peak of their powers. I'm still confident to harass them like dogs if they dare to mess with me. The regressor protagonist, so what? Look at protagonist Yuki Rito, who is kneeling in front of me right now. Although I don't know where she got the power that resembles a few percent of Shirahige from One Piece. In the end you still got overconfident and knelt down in front of the time traveler, right? After complaining to get the cake from the system. Naturally, Eiji did not miss this opportunity to get a reward. The system notification that sounded wonderful rang in his head, but he wasn't going to check it now and would do it later. For now, looking at the protagonist Rito, who was kneeling and had no more strength to resist. Eiji actually had an idea to kill him, but the system once said that if he killed the protagonist early before the franchise plot was completed, he wouldn't be able to get any rewards when complaining about the plot of the franchise because the protagonist was dead before the plot ended. He could kill the protagonist, but it would cost him a lot of rewards. To Eiji, rewards were clearly more important than taking the protagonist's life. And this was also still in the early stages of the plot of the To Love Ru franchise. He really had a lot to lose by cutting the leak at this point. In the end, instead of killing Rito Regressor with Excalibur because he kind of wanted to try it, he gave up on the idea and just stared at the other party with a condescending look using his Sharingan. What are you going to do to me? You're not going to kill me, are you? Rito asked nervously. Well, what do you think? Haven't you been yelling to kill me? If you lose, and I want to kill you. Doesn't that make sense? Eiji grinned, the three tomo in his eyes began to roll. Rito, who saw this, panicked, although he was not afraid of death, but he did not want to lose this second chance. No, he couldn't die here before becoming the true harem king. There were still many women waiting for him in the future to become his wife. Yui, Sarenji, Lala, Momo, Nana, etc. Even his little sister Mikon is not allowed to marry any man other than her older brother. No. Stop it. Eiji, you can't kill me. For today's matter, I admit I was wrong, I apologize. So you can't. Before he finished speaking, his gaze that was still fixed on Eiji's strange eyes rolled. Suddenly he felt dazed, a lot of information and images entered his brain. It was fine if the information and images were something else, but in that image he saw something that made his face distorted and gripped his heart as if it was pierced there. His eyes were empty and even shed tears. Not only that, his head even felt heavy as if a green hat was pressing on his head. What exactly did Rito see that made him like this? Only Rito and Eiji knew. Eiji smiled, he patted the shoulder of Rito, who was still kneeling there in shock, before walking away from the empty factory area. It was estimated that it took half an hour for Rito to escape from the illusion or genjutsu created by his three-tomo Sharingan. He slightly regretted that the genjutsu he could create at the moment was not strong enough and its duration did not last long. If his Sharingan evolved into the Mangekyo Sharingan, he could definitely make Rito endure the pain of NTR for at least hours. But for now it was fine, just consider it a small warning from him to Rito so that the boy would think twice before looking for trouble with him in the future. Eiji might not realize, but when he went to the empty factory and fought with Rito, his actions at that time were seen by a crow above the tree, which was actually not an ordinary crow but a demon bird that was usually used as a familiar by supernatural beings, especially by devils. With his perception, especially after activating the three-tomo Sharingan, he was certainly aware of the gaze staring at him, even if it was from an animal like a bird. But just like that, he did not know that the bird that looked like a crow perched atop a tree not far away, it was actually the pet or familiar of someone who was currently watching everything from quite a distance. Precisely in an office-like room with neatly arranged furniture. A short black-haired girl with glasses had her chin resting on one of her hands. Next to her, there was also a long black-haired girl with glasses and the same uniform as the girl sitting next to her. Both of them had been watching the monitoring screen connected to the demonic familiar that the long black-haired girl had. By now, the two had finished watching and both turned to look at each other. The one who spoke first was the short black-haired girl and her voice sounded decisive. That transfer student named Eiji Seiya. Tomorrow I want him to come to my office. The girl sitting next to her understood and she nodded. Understood, Kaiku. I will invite him tomorrow. Chapter 6, The Girl Who Fell in the Bathroom. Ding! There was a familiar sound, but it wasn't the sound of the system, it was the sound of the oven that had finished baking something inside. A blond boy in a white apron like a master chef was about to open the oven door. But no, he stopped and opened a drawer to put on heat-proof gloves first before finally proceeding to open the oven door and take out the contents onto the table. A very delicious aroma billowed out, making the boy smile with satisfaction. It's pizza, by the way. Is it necessary to show the cooking scene? Host, are you talking to me? The blond boy was of course Eiji, who had returned to his home. No, not you, and you won't understand. So forget it, just pretend I didn't say anything before. It's already night, the sun has set and the sky is decorated with the moon and stars. In a two-story house located in Kuah town and not far from his school. This was his home, the one he bought because his real home was in another world. It's not time to talk about the other world yet. So for now, Eiji had prepared his own dinner, after finishing dinner and drinking a glass of fresh sheep's milk that he kept in the refrigerator. Wiping his mouth with his hand, he glanced at the wall clock in his house and it showed 8 p.m. Precisely at hour 1946. And I haven't showered yet. System, I'll go take a shower first. You don't have to tell me as if I can wait somewhere else, host. I am connected to you, your soul to be exact, and I am in you. So? You're coming to bathe with me and watch me bathe, Miss System. I'm not denying that, after all I am your system. It makes sense that I have to stay online 24/24 every day to constantly monitor my host for his safety, right? Please ignore me and bathe as usual. Miss System said that. So what else is there to argue about? Eiji asked just because he was curious. After all, this was the first time he had a system like the protagonist in that novel, and he actually had some unimportant questions that were often ignored by the protagonists in that novel or anime. Fortunately, from Miss System's feminine-sounding voice. The other party should at least be female, right? Since Miss System was female, Eiji didn't mind the other party watching him take a bath. He wouldn't blush, or make a big deal out of a small matter like this by shouting, "Ah! System, you hentai! You pervert, blah blah blah," for the sake of a crisp funny plot. How stupid! Eiji sighed. He had already taken off all his clothes and got into the bathtub. Feeling the bathtub water with lots of cool foam, from inside the bathtub, he could also see the view of the moon from the window right beside him. In a very relaxing moment like this, he suddenly remembered something that upset him. I hate Yuya, that lucky bastard is too humble and herbivorous. No, why are you suddenly scolding the protagonist of another franchise that doesn't even have anything to do with you? I hate Rito too, that fool only has a handsome face and silver hair, but his mentality really disgusts me. Oak, stop. The harem genre, but it's over volumes, and the protagonist is still a virgin with a lot of beautiful girls surrounding him. Host. Obviously he didn't have to think too much and just accepted his childhood friend's love. What's her name? Miharu. Yes, that girl is quite pretty. Hey. Forget Rio's protagonist, but Yuya's protagonist. Stop, stop host. You have to stop right there. Otherwise, those guys will spray you. The system's virtual screen kept flashing in front of his eyes with a yellow square danger logo that read danger. Instead of being scared or worried, Eiji found the warning amusing. He wondered if, in addition to displaying this, could the system display the latest movie from his previous life? I can. Let's just stop and watch the movie. I can even display spoilers for the unreleased movie The Meg 2. Miss System coaxed as if coaxing a brat who spoke badly about others behind their backs. Such actions are really naughty. Aren't you afraid of being sprayed by people on the other side? Eiji held his chin with one hand, he seemed to be considering Miss System's offer. What about subtitles? I'm not good at English. Don't you speak English now? Author translates English for me. And you too. Right. Me too. I almost forgot about that. Yet, we're not good at English. We do. Seeing her host start bathing as usual, even forgetting about the movie talk, Miss System let out a sigh of relief. Finally this guy stopped looking for trouble with his mouth. By the way Miss System, I just remembered. Earlier, after I complained about Issei and Rito, I hadn't checked my reward. Alright. Want to check it now? In the bathtub. Eiji rolled his eyes, he rinsed the shampoo in his blonde hair with water and it looked shiny now. Leaning against the bathtub, he stared at the virtual screen in front of him as if using it as a mirror. Seeing himself in the reflection of the system's virtual screen, Eiji nodded in satisfaction. Hey, what's your answer, and can you not use me as a mirror? Miss System asked dissatisfiedly, her voice even sounding a little annoyed. Of course, check now. I felt my luck against Sky when I was in the bathtub. So I must have gotten a good reward. This confidence. Where did it come from? Also, when did you get lucky? You're just saying nonsense. Miss System silently complained, now she had a rough idea of what kind of person her host was on the first day they bonded on the same boat. This person is. Go ahead, just do the job professionally. Ding! It was detected that the host has changed the plot in the High School DxD franchise. Successfully changed 6.9% of the plot of High School DxD by making heroines Rias and Akeno feel disgusted at protagonist Issei. Ding! Congratulations host, you got the Boboiboe Thunderstorm character card. WTF Boboiboe. That's quite surprising, but when or rather what did I do to make Rias and Akeno feel disgusted at protagonist Issei? Eiji was confused. This morning he had just transferred schools, saved Yui who was about to fall down the stairs, made a good impression on her, and made the protagonist Rito angry and jealous. In the afternoon he beat up Rito and after that he went home. Although he heard Issei's inner voice, but that was it. He hadn't even seen that protagonist Issei and hadn't done anything to the other party. As for Rias, he had only seen her at the window back then and coincidentally he probably did replace or rather precede the scene of Issei's first encounter with Rias back then, right? Although Eiji just remembered this, but he was sure that none of what he had done could make Rias, and even the heroine Akeno whom he had never seen feel disgusted at Issei's protagonist. So Miss System, do you know something? Miss System was somehow a bit slow to respond and said, I don't know either, host. How do you not know? It was obviously you who mentioned that Rias and Akeno were disgusted by Issei. Knowing this, you don't know the details. Eiji narrowed his eyes, I feel like Miss System is hiding something from me. Suspicious. Miss System. Ahem. Host, I really don't know the details. The system can only detect the result, while the details. It probably requires the system to know what Rias and Akeno are thinking. The system doesn't have the ability for that, so I really don't know. Really? Yes host. Please don't doubt me, even if there's something I can't tell the host. That must be because the system rules restrict me and definitely won't harm the host. Hearing Miss System explain so much was like fearing she suspected him. Eiji did not ask further about this matter, and he also understood that the thing called system also had its own rules made by its creator. As long as it didn't harm himself, Eiji felt fine not knowing the details for now. Although he didn't know what Miss System was hiding from him, knowing it didn't hurt him. He felt that was enough. Perhaps he would naturally find out in the future as well. For now. Miss System, integrate the Boboiboe Thunderstorm character card on me right now. This card allows me to possess the power of that character, right? Eiji had heard of this kind of thing in several novels with system protagonists, and he could already guess what the function of this character card was. So don't waste time explaining the obvious and just use it. Yes, host, just as you thought. Ding! Start integrating the Boboiboe Thunderstorm character card on the host. A few seconds later. The process has been completed. Ding! Successfully integrated the Boboiboe Thunderstorm character card. The host can now use the power of the character according to the character card's fusion level with the host. For the Boboiboe Thunderstorm character card, it took 1 week for the fusion process to reach 100%. Current fusion level, Boboiboe Thunderstorm, 8%. PS, once the character card fusion reaches 100%, the host can use 100% of the character's full power and make the character's power his own. It can even be developed according to the power of the host in the future. Eiji listened to what Miss System said well, and at this moment he did feel a new power flowing inside his body. Although the fusion level had only reached 8%, stretching one finger out of the water, he focused the power into his index finger, and at that moment a red lightning bolt was instantly created at the tip of his finger. It gathered and turned into a mini red lightning ball that matched his imagination. Boboiboe Thunderstorm. This is actually one of the powers that the protagonist of a certain franchise named Boboiboe possesses. Boboiboe is actually a type of protagonist with elemental powers. At his peak, he has many elements that he can master and can even combine into new elements so that his power can reach level 4C, or can also be said to be a small planet level. Eiji himself doesn't really remember the franchise, and he only watched the animation until Boboiboe unlocked a new element that made him Boboiboe Galaxy. Boboiboe Thunderstorm, just one of Boboiboe's Tier 2 elements in the original work, and it allows him to have the power of red lightning, which is certainly much stronger than ordinary lightning. Now Eiji had this power and he was actually excited. Although Boboiboe Thunderstorm was far inferior to Boboiboe Galaxy, but among the elements that Boboiboe possessed, Boboiboe Thunderstorm's red lightning element is the element with the best destructive capacity among the Tier 2 elements in the Boboiboe franchise. The point was that the reward this time was satisfactory, and it was still the first day he got the system. Among the time travelers or protagonists with systems, he could definitely be called a cheater, okay? No, his power development is very cheating. In 1 day, he was already this strong. What about 1 month, 2 months, or 1 year in the future? At that time Eiji would be able to confidently fight the final boss in his world. The other party had multi-solar system level strength that was basically probably comparable to multiverse level. That level of power was terrifying. He also didn't really know how strong the final boss on his home world was. But whatever, he was still in the process of leveling up and didn't need to think about fighting the final boss on his home world. Just think about it in the future. For now, it's his superhuman senses that have been enhanced, especially after integrating the Boboiboe Thunderstorm character card. He sensed something approaching him, or rather, appearing right above him while he was in the shower. Someone wants to attack me? Who? Is it Rito? He's coming for revenge. Eiji was about to get up from the bathroom with lightning speed, but Miss System suddenly stopped him in a panic. Stop, host. This is a good opportunity. Don't move, otherwise you'll miss the main heroine. Main heroine? Who is the heroine who has a plot appearing in the bathroom? Wait, don't tell me. Eiji realized something, and at the same time it appeared. A pink-haired girl, without any clothes, appeared in the air, or rather it fell right on top of his bathtub. Eiji, who was bathing, was of course crushed by the girl's body and felt a soft object pressing against his face. There was also a rubbery texture on his face. As a person, cough. I mean an MC who doesn't want to miss a good opportunity by freezing or blushing like a herbivorous protagonist in another franchise. He, Eiji Seiya, would definitely blush or freeze in this situation. Since it's an accident, of course don't blame him for accidentally doing something bad. As the girl's body had just fallen on top of his, he reached out one of his hands to squeeze the pink-haired girl's big breasts and his other hand slid to her ass. Not only did he squeeze, he also caressed what he was holding, making the pink-haired girl moan. Ah! Wait, can you not touch? Ah, no. No, don't touch my tail, ah! The pink-haired girl's body trembled, Eiji could see her pink eyes glazed and misty, drool even dripped from her mouth as she wrapped her slender arms around his neck. In one of Eiji's hands, he was indeed holding the tail that grew around the girl's ass and he deliberately squeezed the heart-shaped tip of the tail. The tail was thin and black in color, looking like a succubus tail. But putting that aside, he opened his mouth and ate one of the girl's breasts. All those movements were done in 0.1 second after the two collided, so anyone could see that it was not intentional. It was basically an accident. Eiji wanted to tell that with his movements to the pink-haired girl who seemed to almost come in his arms. The bodies of the two were in a bathtub full of foam, and of course made the girl also wet along with him. After the two of them continued in that position for 2 minutes. Oh! Ah! I feel weird. Something is coming out of my pussy. Please stop touching me there, otherwise I'll... Ah! Ah! It's coming out. Twitch. Twitch. The pink-haired girl twitched many times before completely collapsing in Eiji's arms, and she seemed to faint. Eiji immediately got up and got out of the bathtub with the girl in his arms. Looking at the girl's familiar face that looked very beautiful, he was now completely convinced the other party was the heroine. And it was the kind of main heroine that the plot said. She should have fallen in the protagonist's bathroom. But look at it now. Why did this girl fall in my bathroom? Chapter 7, My name is Lala Sadalin Deviluk. Shortly after the perverted accident in the bathroom earlier happened. It only took a few minutes for the pink-haired girl to wake up from her stupor. When she woke up, the girl realized that she woke up in an unknown bed and on her body was a white shirt that was bigger than her. There were also white shorts with no panties somehow attached to her body. No matter how you look at it, the clothes she was wearing were men's clothes. She also clearly remembers what happened earlier when she fell in the bathroom, even clearly remembering when the blonde boy hugged her body, held her tail and caressed her breasts in a way that made her feel good until something came out of her pussy. The pink-haired girl had no specific knowledge of the perverted aspects of what the blonde boy was doing. So she didn't blush, or feel embarrassed by the previous incident. Instead of feeling that way, she was curious as to who the blonde boy was that seemed to be letting her sleep in his room. Rising from the bed, she walked out of the room. Looking around, she sensed the presence of someone downstairs. So she went downstairs and finally she saw the blonde boy. Unlike before where he was naked, showing his hard, muscular, and touchable body. Now the boy was wearing a black shirt and white shorts. Don't know why, the pink-haired girl was a little disappointed to see the other party already dressed. After that her gaze shifted to what the blonde boy was doing. He seemed to be watching something from the rectangular-shaped object on his lap. Perhaps sensing his arrival, the other party turned their heads and looked at her. Hello. My name is Lala Sadalin Deviluk, what's your name? Asked the pink-haired girl in a cheerful tone like a little girl even though her body was that of a sexy and curvaceous big girl. Eiji, who saw that Lala had woken up from her stupor and came downstairs while wearing his shirt and shorts, nodded and smiled with satisfaction, especially when he saw that the loose shirt displayed Lala's beautiful white nape and neck. The other party was obviously not wearing any underwear, he was sure of this as he was the one who helped the girl put on his clothes when she fainted. It's a good view. Too bad I didn't do anything when she fainted. Of course, I'm a gentleman after all. How could I do such a thing to an unconscious girl? Such disgusting behavior would only be done by hentai protagonists who don't have the ability to conquer women without committing rape or other evil things. Lala tilted her head, she was confused by the voice she heard in her head. She was about to ask, but the blonde boy sitting in front of her also started to introduce himself. Hi, I'm Eiji Seiya. You can call me Eiji, and by the way, this is my house. After you passed out in the bathroom, I took the initiative to dry your body and help you put on my clothes. To do all that, I've seen your naked body and even touched it at some point. Sorry about that. To prevent any misunderstandings, Eiji eloquently explained what he did to the other party honestly when she fainted. If it was a normal girl, they would definitely feel very embarrassed and angry when an unknown man saw their naked body and even touched the sensitive areas on their body. At worst, the girl would cry and say that they can't get married anymore. And woo woo woo. Keep crying. That was what Eiji was worried about, but he still seemed to underestimate Lala and the girl's personality in the original work. Lala just nodded and smiled brightly after hearing his explanation and said, "Thank you, Eiji." You're welcome." Eiji also nodded. Sure enough, just like in the original work. Lala's brain circuits are like an innocent little girl who is too innocent. I started to worry, with her personality, this girl would be easily tricked by bad people. If she doesn't come from the To Love Ru franchise, which has the harem and rom-com genre. If she's from a hentai franchise. Oh, forget it, don't think about it. By the way, I still don't understand why Lala can appear in my bathroom instead of the protagonist's bathroom. According to the plot in the original work, the current Lala must be running away from the marriage with the candidate arranged by her father. She teleported from planet Deviluk to Earth using her invention and accidentally locked the teleportation coordinator in the protagonist's bathroom, and that's when their first encounter started. But look now, the first heroine of the To Love Ru franchise teleported into my bathroom while I was taking a shower, and I practically replaced the scene that protagonist Rito should have had. Rito regressor, you're pathetic, you're green, did you know? That voice again. And still a voice similar to that of Eiji sitting in front of her. But Lala clearly saw that the other party was not speaking through his mouth. Hearing this familiar voice, it was actually not the first time she had heard it. She had been hearing this voice since this morning, or rather since 22 hours ago before she teleported to Earth. Lala became excited, she walked up to Eiji and pointed at him. "It's really you. Hey, hey." Eiji put his laptop displaying a YouTube video on the table and looked at the sexy girl wearing his shirt in confusion. "Eiji, you're the person I've been looking for all this time." Lala shouted again. She even sat next to Eiji and took the initiative to hug one of his arms. Eiji did not refuse. Instead of asking why the other party was hugging him, he asked, "Why are you looking for me? I believe this is the first time we've met." He, why? It's because. Lala gigglingly wanted to tell the truth. She wanted to say that she had been looking for him ever since she heard his voice talking about the plots, heroine, and protagonists of the franchises To Love Ru, DxD, etc. There were many things she had heard, especially about Eiji, who was a time traveler. And the recent information that said she was also actually one of the heroine. Although Lala has the personality of a little girl, she is not stupid and quickly concludes that Eiji, a time traveler, is an interesting person and knows many things about the future. The other party even knew she was running away from a marriage with a candidate arranged by her father and used her invention to teleport from planet Deviluk to planet Earth. Due to her own marriage problems, she decided to seek out Eiji for help, and she actually managed to teleport to Eiji's location using her invention. Although there was an accident where she teleported in the bathroom while Eiji was bathing and even let Eiji touch her body, especially her tail and breasts. But with this incident, it only made Lala more confident in her decision. So she was about to tell Eiji the truth now. Starting from the voice that suddenly sounded in her head. But just as she was about to say that, what came out of her mouth was, "Actually, I at you in number %, can hear your voice in." Her voice was suddenly censored and could only say a vague "abba" as she was about to tell the truth. Lala was confused, she tried to say it again. At you in number %, I said I can hear your voice in my head, ugh." I even know you're a time traveler and other things like plot, heroine, and protagonist. But the result is the same. Hey, why is my voice? Only when she said something that had nothing to do with Eiji's inner voice. Her voice returned to normal. Eiji, who saw this familiar scene, was confused. Why did it feel like Lala had throat symptoms similar to UI this morning? Something is wrong with the heroines. Eiji, I didn't. I just wanted to say at %. This time Lala gripped her white neck in confusion. What was really going on? She seemed to be forbidden to say anything about Eiji's inner voice. What do you want to say, Lala? Can you say it clearly? Please speak human language. I don't understand alien languages. I speak human language. And the language of the Deviluk people is actually not much different from human language. Lala wanted to say that with some annoyance. But it was useless, when she was about to say it. Her voice was again censored, making the pink-haired girl pout, stomp her feet on the floor and sulk like a little girl. All right, I give up. With her intelligence, Lala had a rough guess that there was something that seemed to prohibit her from making Eiji realize that she could hear his inner voice. Seeing Lala's strange behavior of suddenly sulking like a little girl, Eiji seriously wondered what was wrong with this girl. He honestly felt that all the heroine he had met so far were a bit strange. Not knowing where it was strange, he felt like the girls knew something but couldn't say it. So Lala, still want to continue explaining the situation? Eiji asked awkwardly. He honestly enjoyed the soft feeling that pressed against his hand as Lala hugged him. He really didn't understand why Rito in his original work was so stubborn to reject a beautiful girl like Lala, who the first time they met had already taken the initiative so far. For that purple-haired girl named Serenji? Although the other party was also the heroine, in his opinion Lala was much more beautiful and pleasant than Serenji. Only Rito in the original work was so crazy about the purple-haired girl. Of course. Lala immediately forgot her frustration at not being able to tell Eiji the truth. But as long as it was not related to his inner voice, it seemed like she could still say it. The key is that she has to pretend and treat the other party as not knowing much about her yet. So she has to explain herself from the beginning. Eiji, although I can't say it clearly why you are the person I'm looking for. It was my discovery that allowed me to find you. That means you're the person I'm looking for. Although I didn't understand, Eiji nodded. He knew Lala liked to make various strange sophisticated devices. The teleportation device is also one of them. So he found it quite plausible. But why is the other party looking for him? Noticing Eiji's puzzled look, Lala continued. Hugged the other party's arm tighter and said, Actually I am a princess from another planet far away from Earth called Planet Deviluk. Oh. Does that mean Lala is an alien? This is strange. Do aliens also have the same appearance as humans, and are they very beautiful? Eiji asked innocently as if he didn't know Lala's identity beforehand. It made a girl like Lala, who usually acted like a little girl, for the first time she felt like rolling her eyes at someone. Obviously you already know my identity and why I got here. But you're still pretending? Even so, this kind of pretend game is actually quite fun. Lala excitedly continued, to people on Earth, I can indeed be called an alien. But unlike other aliens, the appearance of the Deviluk race is rather human-like. By the way, the reason I was able to get here is because I was running away from a marriage arranged by my father. I used a teleportation device to escape to Earth, hoping I could find someone to help me, and I found you. That's why you're the person I'm looking for, Eiji. Before Eiji was about to ask something else, Lala interrupted him. In the bathroom, you touched my breasts, even put them in your mouth. Lala's cheeks flushed slightly, she suddenly became embarrassed as she remembered the incident in the bathroom. Eiji's expression gradually became strange. He felt he could guess where this conversation was going. After all, he was the one who knew the plot. Touching a woman's breasts, it's the same as a marriage proposal in Deviluk, and the man who did it should be held responsible. Eiji, if it's with you, I don't mind. Don't mind to what? Eiji asked with a smile on his face. The girl who blushed while hugging him looked very cute now. I wonder how Rito would react if he saw this scene? Knowing things are not as they were in his previous life. Knowing Lala won't be with him anymore. Rito must be going crazy. Eiji's smile gradually became an evil grin. Even so, in Lala's eyes that smile looked very handsome. Although Lala was a little shy and nervous, she quickly gained her courage and said, I don't mind you being my husband. Eiji, from now on we're engaged. Boom. At this moment, the wall of the house was suddenly blown up and two burly men in black suits appeared at the critical moment. Eiji sighed seeing this. The wall of my house. As for Lala, she immediately hid behind Eiji and looked at the two people who came with panic in her eyes. She clearly knew who the two people who blew up the wall of Eiji's house were. Lala-sama. We found you. Now please follow us back to the kingdom as your highness commands. The two men in black suits spoke in turn. They completely ignored Eiji's presence and started walking towards Lala. One of the men was about to extend a hand to Eiji to make him step aside. Eiji, who saw this, looked indifferent. He gripped and held the arm of the man who was about to push him. The atmosphere instantly froze. Everyone was shocked, including Lala. You human, I suggest you stay out of our business with Lala-sama. This is none of your business. The man whose arm was gripped by Eiji frowned and warned the human in front of him coldly. He was about to forcefully remove his hand from that human's grip, but he just realized that his arm could not be moved. That made him a little surprised. Eiji sneered, his blue eyes flashed with cold light and a few sparks of red lightning also began to creak around the arm gripping the man's hand. None of my business? Lala is my fiancée. She's my woman, you guys want to take her away by force without my consent. Do you guys want to die? Chapter 8, Lala, my fiancée is so strong. Lala is my fiancée. She's my woman. You guys want to take her away? Do you guys want to die? Hearing such dominating words, Lala felt for the first time that her heart was beating very fast and she felt very happy. Eiji's broad back was reflected in her eyes, blocking the bodyguards her father had sent to take her home by force. Right now Eiji was looking very handsome. More handsome than any prince of the Galactic Kingdom ever saw. Lala's tail swings left and right, which means I feel like I've found my true soul mate. Even so, she was worried that the bodyguards sent by her father, Mal and Smut, would hurt Eiji. Eiji was human. He most likely would not be able to match the physical strength of the Deviluk people like Mal and Smut. And if the three of them fought, Eiji would be the one to lose and get hurt. Lala didn't want to see this. She was about to speak up to stop Mal, who seemed to be about to attack Eiji for holding his hand. But before she opened her mouth, she saw red lightning creaking around Eiji's body. Mal, whose arm was still gripped by Eiji, was naturally electrocuted by the red lightning. The room was illuminated with red light and there was the sound of birds chirping, which was actually the sound of lightning electrocuting people. Smut, who saw his partner being electrocuted, was dumbfounded. He was about to move to save Mal by attacking the human. But alarm bells rang in his mind, and just then he saw Mal lying charred on the floor. As for the human, he suddenly disappeared from his sight. Where? He was about to ask, but the human's voice suddenly sounded behind him. Looking for me. The voice was very flat, but Smut felt a chill grip his heart. Danger! Frantically, he twisted his body and made a backward kicking motion. The wall behind him was instantly cut and shattered by the sweep of his foot, but the human he was targeting flashed with red light and suddenly appeared beside him. So fast! That was what Smut thought of the human he was fighting before his head was grabbed by the other party with one hand and he suffered the same fate as Mal. Ah! Red lightning shocked Smut's body and the man himself tried to break free from his hands in panic. But it was useless. Eiji's own physical strength was actually not inferior to Deviluke at Smut's level after various improvements from the system. Like iron claws, his hands gripped Smut's head without letting the other party escape. Eiji, behind you! Lala, who had been watching, suddenly shouted in panic. Glancing back, Eiji saw that the man in the black suit he had first stunned was already awake. The other party was already swinging his fist that was about to reach his head. It was a bit too late to dodge under normal circumstances. But who is Eiji? He's a cheating time traveler. Soon, his blue pupils swirled and 3 Tomo appeared. After activating the Sharingan, his reaction speed, which was already very fast when using the Boboiboi Thunderstorm character card, 8% fusion, could basically make his speed as fast as lightning. Combined with the Sharingan, his reflexes and speed become even crazier. While grabbing the head of the man in the blonde suit, he also grabbed the head of the other man in the black suit after dodging a fist that could destroy a building with a thin gap just by tilting his head a few degrees. If the scene was played in slow motion, it would have been no less epic than Madara's scene in the 4th Ninja Warfield, catching an enemy kunai that was about to hit his face and throwing it back at his enemy. In Eiji's case, he struck back at Mal at almost the same time by grabbing his head and electrocuting him with red lightning at the same time. In Lala's eyes, seeing the 2 bodyguards sent by her father, who were actually the elite among the elite, defeated by Eiji so easily, the pink-haired girl widened her eyes, her mouth opened, and I don't know what to say. What is certain is that Eiji is very strong. No, my fiancé is very strong. Lala was very excited. But looking at her father's 2 bodyguards who were now lying charred on the floor, she was a little worried. Mal and Smut were her father's subordinates after all. Don't worry, I didn't kill them. They just fainted. With their physique, I'm sure they'll wake up in a few minutes. Eiji, who had finished exercising, walked back towards Lala. Lala, who saw him approaching, immediately hugged him and patted his body with a worried expression. Eiji, are you okay? I'm fine. The 2 bodyguards your father sent didn't even hurt me a bit. Eiji said that very naturally, as if it wasn't that I was arrogant, but that was the fact. That's good, but Eiji, how did you know Mal and Smut were the bodyguards my father sent? Lala innocently asked, but there was a playful look in her eyes. She seemed to remember the 2 of them playing a game, pretending not to know. Eiji didn't know what game Lala was playing, but he froze when he heard Lala's question. Damn, I forgot Lala hasn't mentioned once that these 2 people I defeated were bodyguards sent by her father. I know who these 2 people are from the plot. In the original work, Rito also had to deal with these 2 bodyguards of Lala's named Mal and Smut after the accident in the bathroom. But unlike me, Rito, who doesn't have superpowers, naturally doesn't use violent methods to prevent Lala from being taken away by force. So he used the running method while carrying Lala to escape from Mal and Smut. Well, that was in the original work, of course. Now, that plot has changed because of me. More importantly, I have to find a plausible reason to answer Lala's question. How do I know Mal and Smut are the bodyguards Lala's father sent? Of course I know from the way those 2 called you. When they called you Lala-sama, I have a rough guess that they might be underlings sent by your father to take you home by force because you ran away from the marriage candidate your father arranged. Lala, that's the reason why I know. I'm honestly just guessing, do you believe me? Believe in ghost? Lala's bright smile twitched slightly. If I couldn't hear his inner voice, I would have been fooled by his handsome face that looked convincing when he said that. My fiancé is very good at pretending. But I won't be outdone, I can pretend too. With a maximum bright smile, filled with the aura of an innocent little girl. Eiji was overwhelmed seeing this smile. I feel a little guilty deceiving a girl like Lala. But this is about my secret previous life, so I can't talk about it. I believe in Eiji. Silly girl, don't trust me so easily. I feel like a trash who deceived an innocent girl now. Eiji felt depressed, he turned his gaze on the wall of his house, which was basically destroyed by the battle earlier, and he could see his spacious courtyard without the use of windows. That made him even more depressed. The night air was blowing. The moonlight shone on Eiji and Lala, who looked at each other while embracing. For some reason, their faces were getting closer to each other. And when Lala closed her eyes, when their lips were about to meet each other, suddenly someone came again at a time like this. Lala-sama. I came here to fetch you by order of the Noble One. Knowing Mal and Smut were suddenly offline, I'm afraid something bad happened to you. Both of them gasped. Turning to the side, a man in armor entered the house and looked at Lala with a worried expression. Lala, who saw the man's arrival, was surprised. Zeston, you came too. Ah, Lala-sama. Thank goodness you seem to be okay. But who was that human who hugged you? How dare he hug the princess body? Also, what happened to Mal and Smut? They collapsed looking miserable. Zeston looked at Mal and Smut lying on the floor before looking back at Lala. And then his gaze turned cold as he looked at Eiji. Eiji had a dark expression on his face. Why is it that in one day so much trouble comes my way? It's only been one day. Give me a break and enjoy some sweet time with a pretty girl. Author, you dog man. Host, please be patient. Just throw a lightning bolt at Zeston and it should be resolved quickly. Miss System, who had been watching the drama for a long time, suddenly meowed because she was worried that her host would explode. Eiji nodded mentally. Good idea, Miss System. I'll do it. Releasing Lala from his embrace, he created a red lightning sword in one of his hands. This was both a sword and something Boboiboe Thunderstorm could throw at his enemies when he was too lazy to engage in close combat. Zeston became alert. He immediately took out his knight's sword from its sheath and aimed it at the unusual human in front of him. Don't worry, Lala-sama, I will save you from the hands of this human. No, Zeston. You must not fight with Eiji. Lala suddenly walked forward and stood between the two. Eiji fell silent and sighed. Meanwhile, Zeston was confused. Lala-sama, step aside. I'll save you from this bad guy. No. Why? Because he's my fiancé. Lala said that so loudly that Zeston took a step back. He looked at Lala and the human named Eiji back and forth before asking. Since when? Since a few hours ago. Eiji proposed to me and I accepted. Lala said with innocently. Zeston shook his head. Even so, your father asked me to take you home. Lala-sama, please obey and come with me. Lala shook her head. No, I don't want to go home. Lala-sama. I want to stay with Eiji. Ugh. Zeston was also getting into trouble now. He looked at the human named Eiji, who seemed to be favored by his princess. Judging from the red lightning sword that suddenly appeared in his hand, and from Mal and Smut, who were unconscious on the floor, he guessed that the two men were defeated by Eiji. So the human named Eiji must be quite strong and not an ordinary human. Of all the princess marriage candidates, the human in front of her was probably the best so far. But the problem is that the princess's father doesn't know yet. And Zeston needed to confirm the other party's eligibility in his own way. Lala-sama. I won't force you to go home, but I have a condition. Really? Zeston, what are the conditions? Lala smiled. She was very happy to hear that she didn't have to be forced to go home anymore. Zeston smiled wryly at this rebellious princess. He looked at Eiji indifferently and said, the condition is that the human named Eiji is chosen by Lala-sama as this fiancé. I want him to duel with me, and if he wins, I will surrender to force Lala-sama to return home. But Eiji, he. Lala hesitated, even though she knew Eiji was capable of defeating Mal and Smut. Zeston was his personal bodyguard, the other party was the best swordsman and commander of the royal guard on the planet Deviluk. So in terms of power, Zeston must be much stronger than Mal and Smut. Therefore he was worried that Eiji would not be able to. I agree. Lala, let me duel with him. Eiji patted Lala's shoulder and pushed her back gently. Lala was surprised, she was about to ask. But looking at Eiji's very confident expression, she was silent for a moment and nodded in agreement. Her gaze said, I believe in my fiancé. Zeston, who saw the two, somehow smiled. It seemed that Lala-sama really liked this human named Eiji. Even so, he still had to test him. Pointing at the other party with his sword, he said, Human, what is your full name? Eiji Seiya. Eiji replied indifferently as he walked over and stood not far in front of Zeston. Zeston nodded. I am Zeston Deviluk, Lala-sama's personal bodyguard and commander of the royal troops in the Deviluk kingdom. As long as you can withstand my 3 attacks or injure me, you can be considered the winner in this duel. Oh! Eiji widened his eyes, the other party underestimated me. But he nodded, not wanting too much nonsense. Okay, but before that, can we move? I don't want my house to become a ruin. Zeston saw that this house did have many battle scars before he came. And if the two fought here, he himself could not guarantee this house would not collapse. Okay, then you choose the place. It took less than a minute. In the front yard of Eiji's house, which was quite spacious and under the moonlight, Eiji and Zeston faced each other there. Are you sure you want to duel here? Zeston asked. Yes, let's start right now. Zeston nodded. Then you can attack me first. Sure. Under the watchful eye of Zeston, and Lala, who was watching on the sidelines, Eiji, who had been holding a lightning sword in his hand from the start, immediately threw the sword at Zeston as if it was not a sword at all. Who wants to play swordplay with normal? Just throw the sword, okay? Zeston misunderstood. He didn't expect the other party to just throw the sword away. Even though the sword shot out extremely fast accompanied by terrifying red lightning, Zeston was originally very confident to fend off the flying sword. But just as he made a slash to deflect it, his pupils shrank because the lightning sword exploded. Asterisk boom. The front yard of Eiji's house was illuminated with red light accompanied by the deafening sound of lightning strikes. It was only one attack. And it's Zeston who took the attack. He. Chapter 9, The Beautiful Senior Who Came to Class. Then I will return to the kingdom and report to His Majesty about your hand-picked fiancé, Lala-sama. Yes, Zeston. Be careful on the road and please convince Dad. Lala waved her hand at Zeston, who had many bandages on his body. Behind him were Smut and Mal, who also had many bandages on their bodies. After being defeated by Eiji in the duel, Zeston really kept his promise. Eiji, who was standing beside Lala, offered to treat their wounds first before leaving. Being struck by his red lightning could cause serious injuries. If it was a normal person, that person would definitely die. But with the Deviluk physique, fortunately they had a certain level of endurance after being hit by his red lightning. They mostly fainted and only had a few injuries on their bodies that could still be treated with light treatment. Seeing Zeston, who boarded the spaceship with Mal and Smut and had completely left. Looking at the small point of light in the increasingly distant night sky, Eiji wondered if he was forgetting something. Eiji, from now on I will live with you. Lala, who had been standing beside him, hugged his hand and smiled happily. Eiji also smiled and nodded. Of course, you're my fiancé. You can stay with me as long as you want. He really? Of course. Who can resist a beautiful fiancé who wants to live with you? Eiji was not one of those people. But seriously, I feel like I've forgotten something. It's just that what? Lala tilted her head, she didn't know what Eiji had forgotten. Feeling bored standing outside, even though she did not feel chilled by the night wind due to her Deviluk physique, she would rather spend time with Eiji inside the house. Nay Eiji, can we go back inside the house now? Eiji turned his head, looked at Lala, who was still wearing his loose shirt, and slapped his own forehead. It was still night. The wind outside is quite cold. Lala must be cold, right? I'm sorry, is Lala cold? Okay, let's go inside quickly. There are some empty rooms in my house, and I'll prepare one for you. Without waiting for the other party's answer, Eiji immediately held and pulled the girl's soft hand. Eh. I'm actually not. Actually not. Eiji turned his head again with a questioning look at the pink-haired girl. Lala was silent for a moment, but she shook her head with a smile. No, it's nothing. Hehe Eiji, let's go in quickly. It's a little cold outside. The blonde boy nodded, and resumed walking while holding her hand. He didn't notice the girl's little lie, and even forgot the other party also had a Deviluke physique that was basically not so vulnerable to the night wind. Lala smiled so wide, she was excited, and felt sweet in her heart when she saw Eiji was so worried about her. Although mom had said lying was bad, but somehow she wanted to lie that she felt cold before. Eiji, who walked back to his house, looked at his house and froze. He stopped walking and Lala also naturally stopped. Lala was confused and asked what was wrong. Instead of answering with his mouth, Eiji complained in his heart. This is what I forgot, right? Zest and the other two have already left. I forgot to ask them to fix some of the holes in the walls of my house. Although I can fix it myself with the power of money, but hey! Wouldn't it be faster to use alien technology? I think the Zest who brought the spaceship has something like that. But now it's too late, those guys already left without cleaning up the mess they made in my house. Lala opened her mouth into an O shape, she looked at a part of the wall of Eiji's house that had a hole in it and pondered while holding her chin. Ugh! It's fine, it's just that I'm thinking of asking people to repair the wall tomorrow. For now, let's just ignore it and rest. Eiji said that and was about to pull Lala's soft hand again. The problem of the wall of his house could be thought of later. Now he's actually quite tired too. I want to sleep. A lot of plots happened in one day. I don't know which crazy author made him work overtime. Oh right, isn't that the dog author? Host, what are you thinking? You won't understand Miss System. Miss System. I don't understand because you don't want to explain. Little Loli somewhere pouted, inflating her cheeks in dissatisfaction. Lala, who had been pondering, finally opened her mouth and said, Eiji. Leave the matter of your house wall to me. I can fix it for you. Hey? Lala, can you? Have you ever worked as a construction worker before? Eiji suddenly remembered something. No, this was actually what he had forgotten. Oh, I almost forgot, Lala is a genius scientist. In the original work, she had a robot companion named Peak. That little robot has many uses and many items inside its body. In many episodes of the anime, the little robot is the one who often cleans up the mess that Lala makes when the girl experiments with the items she makes. Rito's house, I don't know how many times in the original work it was blown up by Lala, and repaired quickly. And the one who repaired it was that little robot. Wait. I almost forgot too. Shouldn't that little robot have appeared earlier? She should have appeared before Mal and Smut. But where is that little robot now? Can someone tell me? Hey, there's something wrong with the plot order. Lala's lips twitched. She had no experience as a construction worker, but as expected of her time traveler fiancé. Eiji knew she had a robot companion named Peak. In the original work, Peak seemed to have done a lot of hard work for her. Well, to be honest, now she was also wondering where Peak was. Knowing she ran away from home, the little robot should have tried to find her trail and chase her to Earth. But where is she now? Her idea to help with Eiji's house wall problem was actually related to Peak. I just need a certain tool that I once made in that little robot's pocket to repair the wall of Eiji's house quickly. That was the original idea. But since Peak hasn't found it until now. The pink-haired girl, Lala, thought of another idea. Don't worry, Eiji. Give me some time, I can make a sophisticated tool to repair the walls of your house in no time. Lala was very confident when she said that. As a genius scientist, if the thing she needed was not in her hands and difficult to retrieve. She just needs to recreate it. Eiji knew Lala was indeed capable of doing what was said. But what time is it? He shook his head and said, let's think about the wall problem tomorrow. It's late now, let's just go to bed. The next day. There was no need to prolong the wall problem because Lala had actually made a sophisticated device that could repair the damage to the wall within an hour. And that was this morning, which left Eiji amazed and surprised. This heroine was really a genius scientist. Thinking about this, I feel even luckier to have such that girl as a fiancée. Luckily Lala somehow fell in his bathroom instead of the protagonist's bathroom. It seems that some plots can also change, even without his intervention. Although he didn't know why, being a person who didn't like to make a big deal out of things. He naturally just wanted to enjoy his good fortune and work hard to accomplish the things in front of him. For example, right now, during the school lunch break, a girl with long black hair and glasses suddenly came to his class looking for him. Excuse me, is the student named Eiji Seiya here? Eiji naturally recognized the identity of the girl and got up from his seat. It's me. Senpai, do you need anything from me? The few students who were still in class 2A actually had various expressions at this time. From surprise, curiosity, and jealousy. The boys in the class were jealous to see her being sought after by a beautiful third-year senior. While the others, Ui for example, was frowning. She seemed unhappy for some reason. As for the protagonist? Are you wondering where Rito is? That boy didn't go to school today because he had a fever, so he asked permission to take the day off. Eiji smiled amusedly when he first heard this news from the homeroom teacher. Of course, he believed Rito was really sick, or rather he might still be traumatized by what he saw in the genjutsu he created yesterday. So there was no need to think about Rito's protagonist for now. Fixing the position of her glasses, the girl who came for him said, I'm from the student council. I came here to pick you up because our student council president invited you to her office. Many students in the class were even more surprised, and started whispering to each other. What's going on? Why was Eiji-kun summoned by the student council president? Did Eiji-kun do something bad to get summoned by the student council president? And blah blah blah. All sorts of whispers were heard in the classroom. Ui even looked worried, as she happened to be sitting not far from him, and asked in a low voice. Eiji-kun, did you do something that made the student council president call you? Eiji, who was about to leave his seat, was silent for a moment. He looked at Ui with his usual smile and said, I didn't. You know, yesterday I spent most of the time with you. Ui, how can you suspect a good student like me? Ui stuck out her tongue like a cat, feeling embarrassed by the other students who were staring at them for whispering. Eiji shook his head. He walked past Ui and did not forget to whisper into her ear. If I come to class late after the lunch break ends, tell the teacher that I'm at the student council office, okay? Feeling the warm breath and masculine voice in her ear, Ui blushed. She glared at Eiji, but nodded in response. How cute, Ui. You. Ui's face was getting red, but she couldn't scold the blonde boy who was teasing her. With the current atmosphere in the classroom, she was too embarrassed to say something at a loud volume to Eiji. Besides, what she heard was his inner voice. So it would look weird if she suddenly scolded Eiji for teasing her, right? After all, from another person's point of view, Eiji only asked her to tell the teacher if he was late for class when he went to the student council office. Ignoring Ui, who looked embarrassed, Eiji continued walking to the girl who came to call him and stood right in front of him. Then come on, senpai. I'll follow you to the student council office. The girl seemed to be a little dazed as she looked at him, but she soon returned to her cold image and nodded. Okay, follow me. Don't worry, you didn't do anything bad. The student council president just has something to talk to you about, Eiji-kun. Really? That's good. The two walked out of the classroom. Eiji walked beside the girl and let her lead the way to the student council office for him. By the way, introductions. My name is Tsubaki Shinra, third-year student. While walking, Tsubaki also glanced at him with a faint smile. That girl could be considered very beautiful. Besides having long straight black hair and glasses that covered her heterochromic eyes that were colored violet and brown. Her face and figure itself were above average. Her breasts reached D-cup, her waist was slender and her legs were also quite long like a model. As expected from one of the heroine in a fan service-filled franchise like High School DxD. Tsubaki Shinra is undoubtedly a very beautiful girl. Those heterochromic eyes look beautiful, I feel like looking at them up close, cough. What a pity, a beautiful girl like this also has brain problems in the original work. So just let it out. Better keep a polite distance from her. I can't tease her like I tease you. Oh. So your name is Tsubaki Shinra? Then I'll call you Shinra-senpai. Eiji said that with an O expression as if he just knew and just heard the girl's name for the first time. Tsubaki's lips twitched. His acting skills are really good. If I hadn't heard his inner voice, I would have been fooled. True to Kaiku's words, this guy would definitely pretend not to know her when they met, even though he knew a lot about her from the plot in the original work. But hearing the other party praising her eyes and her figure in his heart, she was slightly embarrassed and pleased. Although the other party also mocked her that he had brain problems in the original work. Wait, I have a brain problem? What's going on? Am I no less stupid than Rias in the original work? Although on the surface she looked calm while leading Eiji to the student council office. In her mind, she was really curious about her own plot in the original work. Tsubaki wanted to force Eiji to tell her, but her boss had warned her against exposing that she could hear his inner voice. At least for now before they saw the situation first. Although a little reluctant, she had to be patient and let Eiji come to the student council office first. Eiji, who was still walking beside Tsubaki, frowned and secretly glanced at the girl walking beside him suspiciously. He wondered why this girl suddenly fell silent. After introducing the name, you stopped talking and continued walking in silence? If that's all right. But why do I feel like a sheep being herded into a tiger's den? As a person who knew the original work, he certainly had some guesses as to why he was summoned to the student council office by Tsubaki. I just hope the other party doesn't provoke me or something. If not, don't blame me for hitting a woman. Chapter 10, Beautiful Student Council President Invitation. In the student council room, a blonde boy sat alone in front of a short black-haired girl. There was also Tsubaki, another black-haired beauty who stood beside the girl in front of him like a secretary. There were only the three of them in the quiet student council room with 2 steaming cups of hot tea. The tea was made by Tsubaki, by the way. Nice tea, Shinra-senpai, said the blonde boy, Eiji, who had just taken a small sip from the teacup in front of him. Thank you. If Eiji-kun wants to refill your teacup, please just say so. Tsubaki smiled slightly, although it didn't show on her face, she actually felt proud of her tea-making skills. I'm quite happy that this time traveler likes my tea. Eiji looked at Tsubaki, who secretly looked happy that he was praising her tea with a funny look. I wonder if Tsubaki already has a boyfriend? If not, maybe I can. Cough, cough. The girl sitting in front of him suddenly gave him with sharp look. As for Tsubaki, she glanced the other way with a slight blush on her cheeks. In her mind, she sneered. Who was it not long ago that said he wanted to avoid me because I had brain problems in the original work? Man, you are so inconsistent. Eiji. What's wrong with you two? Student Eiji Seiya, right? Please don't stare too much at my secretary. You can do that later, but for now please focus on me. The girl who said that was practically very beautiful. With black hair cut in a short bob style and glasses covering her violet eyes. Although her expression looks cold and serious, her beauty is above average and not inferior to Tsubaki. Another DxD heroine, although it is a pity that her figure is underdeveloped in the chest. Hey? Why did the air conditioner in this room suddenly become so cold? Eiji subconsciously asked, although with his current power the cold temperature at this level would not trouble him. But I still want to ask. Maybe the air conditioner in the student council office suddenly broke down? Haha, don't worry, the air conditioner in the student council office might be a little broken. The girl sitting in front of her said with laughter, but her eyes didn't look like they were laughing at all. Her slightly dark expression like someone who had just been offended by someone. The cold temperature in the room was caused by a bit of her magic leaking out. Tsubaki pursed her lips, she glanced to the side while stifling a giggle. Eiji-kun, you're very brave. If it was anyone else, they would have been blacklisted by Kaikua for daring to comment on her breasts. Eiji was confused, where did he know the girl in front of him suddenly felt annoyed at him? But I didn't say anything that could upset her, right? Hey heroine, this doesn't make sense. Right? The girls from that franchise have brain problems. UI in class and Lala waiting for me at home are still better than them. Well. The short black-haired girl sighed. It seemed like she could quickly calm herself down, forget the past resentment and said, I'll introduce myself first before we start talking. My name's Sana Shidori, a third-year student and the student council president of this school. And beside me, although I know it seems like student Eiji has already gotten acquainted with Tsubaki. But I will mention that Tsubaki is my secretary in the student council. There are also other student council members, but they are in their respective classes. I know that. Your name is Sana Shidori? Not Sana Satrai? Hehe, that's a pretty funny fake last name. Student council member? Everyone in the student council is a devil, just like the people in Ria's Occult Research Club. In this school, in the original work it was mentioned that Sana and Rias were the supervisors of Kuaha City and they basically made the school their headquarters. Most of the DxD heroines gather at this school. And it's really convenient for the protagonist who also goes to school here because he doesn't have to go far to woo the heroines. Sana and Tsubaki, although it hasn't been mentioned that they are also part of the protagonist's harem. Sana, I know this girl in the original work is also fascinated by protagonist. And Tsubaki? If I'm not mistaken, she will fall in love with a blonde gay who is in the Rias's group. What was his name? I kind of forgot, but Tsubaki is definitely in love with that blonde gay boy. What made me laugh was that Tsubaki's love was unrequited because the blonde gay liked protagonist. Ah ha ha ha. Although it's not so obvious, but the blonde boy in the Rias group is indeed less interested in women. Only when with the protagonist, he somehow blushed, which made my eyes hurt when watching the anime version. I also remember, in the novel version if I'm not mistaken, that gay blonde boy somehow turned into a woman for a while, and yes, he had a pretty romantic moment with the protagonist. Damn, I don't want to remember this. So Shidori-senpai? As you know, I'm a student who just transferred to this school yesterday. Eiji smiled kindly, but he was confused as to why Sana and Tsubaki's expressions suddenly looked ugly. Sana's expression became ugly because she heard Eiji's inner voice that revealed many things. Putting aside her devil identity, which she actually guessed that Eiji must already know as a time traveler. I deliberately pretended to use a fake name during the previous introduction because I also didn't want to be known to be able to hear his inner voice. The point is not to make Eiji suspect something is wrong. But what's wrong with her, who also seems to be involved with protagonist who is said to be very perverted? After hearing Eiji's inner voice from yesterday, she had certainly investigated about all the protagonists in this school. Including Eiji Seiya in the first year, he had also investigated the protagonist of another franchise named Yuaki Rito in the second year. Due to knowing their identities, especially Eiji, she had investigated that Eiji Seiya was really a pervert, and one of the trio of perverts who were notorious for peeping into the girls' changing rooms at this school. Knowing in the original work, she, Sana Satrai, would be fascinated by such a man. She felt very unhappy, even a little disgusted. By the way, she felt Tsubaki had a worse plot than her. Glancing to the side, sure enough the girl also had an expression that was no less ugly than hers. Right now, Tsubaki wanted to hit the head of the dog author who wrote the plot with his feet. Why is another heroine involved with the protagonist, while I'm involved with the gay blonde boy in the Rias group? Although the protagonist isn't better either, but I find the gay blonde boy more disgusting. Wait for the blonde boy in the Rias group? Isn't that Yuato Kaiba? Although I know he looks uninterested in women and would rather improve his sword skills, which I even secretly admire a little. Maybe she does have a bit of a crush on Yuato, who is 1 year younger than her and has a handsome face that matches her aesthetics. But in the original work, she got the green hat because Yuato is actually a gay who likes protagonist. Even when he suddenly became a woman, he had romantic moments with protagonist. There is no need to mention the details of how romantic it is. But she in the original work sounds very pathetic. Tsubaki was so upset, she immediately killed her little crush on Yuato. Forget Yuato Kaiba. There are still many handsome men in this world. For example, Eiji-kun, who was sitting in front of Sana. Although both are blonde like Yuato, Eiji is actually much more handsome. Unlike Yuato's figure that looks slim and rather feminine, Eiji looks athletic with muscles that are not too big and do not look small. His figure was tall and had broad shoulders, even from her position. Tsubaki could see that Eiji's arms looked very strong, and it made her wonder what his figure looked like when he was not wearing clothes. Tsubaki was a little embarrassed when she thought of this. But isn't the other party also interested in her? From his inner voice, Eiji wondered if she had a boyfriend or not. Wouldn't that be enough? Eiji felt that the atmosphere in this room had become very strange. Putting aside Sana, who was still looking at him strangely, but what was wrong with Tsubaki's wolf gaze? I feel Tsubaki suddenly became more interested in me. Is it just a hallucination? In a certain room whose location is unknown. Miss System was watching the drama with a smirk on her face. She didn't forget to eat the popcorn and drink the strawberry-flavored milk she had just ordered from Go Food and Drink Dimensional. By the way, I wonder when host checked his reward? Should I remind him? Oh, never mind. I'll tell him later when he gets home from school. Sana pretended to cough. Ahem. The atmosphere in the student council office returned to normal and Tsubaki stopped with her wolfish gaze. Eiji shuddered a little with the latter. Fortunately, Sana had a high EQ to pretend to cough. Good job, Sana. Sana. I'm honestly a little confused by this time traveler. But whatever, it's kind of fun to suddenly be praised. With a faint smile on her face, she put aside the matter of the protagonist and the brainless plot and said, Eiji-kun, may I call you like that? Sure, it's nice to have a pretty girl like Shidori-senpai call me by my first name. Oh, by the way, Shinra-senpai too. I don't know why, Eiji suddenly spoke so sweetly that the two girls were silent and secretly happy. This man/time traveler is quite nice. Sana and Tsubaki thought. Sana perked up a little and said, thank you. By the way, you must be curious why a student council president like me called you here, right? Not really. I'm very curious why the student council president called me. Eiji said from his mouth, which was in stark contrast to his inner voice. Sana rolled her eyes. This man was very two-faced, but that was okay. I understand everyone has their own secrets. It's natural that you want to pretend. And I will also pretend not to hear your inner voice. Actually, one of my purposes in inviting you here is to invite you to join the student council, Eiji-kun. Eiji was about to open his mouth. It seemed like he wanted to refuse, but Sana immediately raised her hand to interrupt. Sana continued. Don't rush to refuse. As I said earlier, inviting you to the student council is only one of my goals, and my other goal is... What's with the dramatic pause? Just say it and I'll refuse. Sana's lips twitched, she sighed. a little unhappy that the other party was so eager to reject her before she finished her words. Isn't it nice talking to a pretty girl like me? There's also Tsubaki. Aren't you happy to be in the same room with two pretty girls? Even the protagonist you mentioned has never received an opportunity like this. I saw that Eiji-kun seemed reluctant to join the student council. Is that true? Eiji nodded. Sorry Shidori-senpai. I'm really not interested in joining any club for now. Sana was relieved to hear this, although it was a bit difficult. But it proved that she wasn't the only one who would be rejected if she wanted to invite Eiji to her student council club. Rias, that red-haired girl, would also at least have trouble inviting Eiji to join her club. But if the conditions she offered were normal, of course. Sana was confident, she definitely needed to offer something that would make person like time travelers interested in joining her group. Too bad. Eiji-kun isn't interested in joining the club. But what about? Sana suddenly stood up, her violet eyes seemed to glow and the room suddenly became rather dark. Oh wait, the room was dark because Tsubaki quickly closed the window and turned on the lights. Tsubaki! What are you doing? Is it necessary to close the window? Tsubaki pretended to cough, a little embarrassed, but she smiled with her heterochromic eyes that also shone slightly. You guys play special effects to pretend to be cool? Eiji looked at the two with a funny look. Even so, he was also a little wary and adjusted his sitting position to make it somewhat easy to move at any time. As if realizing his vigilance, Sana smiled and said, "Don't worry, we have no intention of hurting you or anything like that. We just want to reveal our true identity." Oh! Eiji raised his eyebrows. He did not expect the other party to immediately want to tell him that she and her group were devils. Although he already knew, he was pretending to be curious now. Sana knew Eiji was only pretending to be curious, but it didn't matter because this was necessary so she could persuade him to join her group. So with one breath, she revealed her devil wings. Tsubaki also did the same. Then Sana said, "You see the wings on our backs? Those are the wings that devils have. Actually we, or let's just say all the student council members in this school are devils. But not like the evil devils that are often told in fairy tales. Devils like us are actually not that evil. Other than our wings, most of our appearances are human-like. This is the original appearance of me and Tsubaki. Are you afraid of our original appearance, Eiji-kun?" Eiji shook his head. "No, you guys look even sexier with that pair of black bat-like wings." Sana and Tsubaki smiled slightly. They were somewhat relieved that Eiji did not look scared or disgusted when he saw their wings. As expected of a time traveler. He must be used to seeing supernatural creatures, right? So now what? I now know the student council is the headquarters of the devil in this school. What is the real purpose of you inviting me here? Don't tell me you want to eat me." Tsubaki giggled. "Of course not, Eiji-kun. Devils like us don't eat human flesh. Actually, we also eat and drink like humans. It's just that we are supernatural beings that have more power than humans." Sana nodded. What Tsubaki said is true. Actually, the reason why I invited you here is to invite you to join my peerage, or let's call it my group. She explained the details of the peerage and the chess piece that could make humans into devils to Eiji before continuing. Just like Tsubaki used to be human before reincarnating into a devil using my queen's pieces. Eiji-kun, you seem to have a hidden power which is most likely sacred gear. You might be wondering what sacred gear is? Let me explain. Sacred gear is. Before Sana explained more, Eiji was too lazy to hear any more knowledge that he basically already knew from the original work and said, "You mean this thing?" Sana, who was interrupted by Eiji, froze. Tsubaki was the same. Not because they were angry or anything like that, but they were surprised by the object that suddenly appeared in Eiji's hand. At the moment it appeared in Eiji's hand, the student council office was immediately illuminated by golden light.